What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to a two-headed show. As you can see, dropping in from the rafters, our pal Gundacker is here. You heard his entrance music. Here he is, live, talking baseball. We realized, Gun pinged me in the Discord. Luckily, I saw it. He realized that we had scheduled shows at the exact same time. So generously, he figured to just jump onto this channel, and we'll do the show here. We'll get one out on his channel, or we'll figure out how to multicast these soon. But Gun, how you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. I don't think baseball existed over the last 3 days until yesterday afternoon when Rafi Devers got traded. So really bad weekend for the Red Sox. Nothing else happened for them.
Yep, nothing at all. But obviously, yeah, trading away yet another franchise player to the NL West, kind of a weird move. I would have expected. I like Kyle Harrison as a pitching prospect, or a young lefty, I guess we got to say at this point, no longer a prospect. But we've seen mixed results so far in the show from a kid who was a very, very highly regarded prospect. But to get very little else in return for that bat, and it's not like he's coming up on a contract. He's locked in for like 9 more years.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, when the I played third base nonsense was happening, I thought there was some tension brewing, and we've seen this like we saw with Luka. Like, is that the best deal that you could have got? Like, I didn't even know he was on the board. Like,
right?
I don't know.
It just seemed reactionary, just like, all right, fuck you, you're out of here. Like, we're gonna just make this happen, and we'll take. All right, Harrison's good enough. Like, they clearly didn't shop him around. Like,
it couldn't have. Like,
that's a top 10 bat in the league, full stop. And just to have it happen like that, to drop on a Sunday, it's just weird. Just felt like the other shoe dropping, like you said, the relationship was frayed. And now apparently he's going to the Giants saying, hey, man, I'll play wherever you want me. First base, second base, third base, I don't give a shit. Put me in center field, it's fine. Whatever you think helps the team, I'm on board. It's like,
I would love for him to win a Gold Glove at first base in San Francisco.
Yeah, right.
That'd be great. He had a game too, so like a heck of a Father's Day game, and then gets traded the same day. What a day it was for Red Sox Twitter.
Yeah, highs and lows for the little Sox fans there. But weird return on that one. Anyway, speaking of returns, we've got a lot of them. What a transition. We've got Mike Stanton. We've got Giancarlo Stanton. It would be funny if he came back as Mike.
Oh no.
We've got Giancarlo Stanton back for the New York Yankees. We were just talking about a moment ago, Michael Talia back from his banishment to the minor leagues for Washington. Give or take some quality there. There's certainly power for Talia, and we'll see what Stanton looks like. One of the very best, or the very best, just raw power swing in baseball for what he does and for his bat speed, but wasn't really able to lift a bat as of like 2 months ago because both his elbows are apparently destroyed. So that's one we'll get into. What are you looking at overall for this slate? Just, kind of initial thoughts on the slate diving in. I'll pull up the Vegas run board as we get to it.
Yeah, it's just one of those medium. I like 6 to 8 slates, 6 to 8 game slates for my DFS wheelhouse, but it's not like we're getting premium pitching. I do think it'll be our first taste of the Red Sox without a Bregman or Devers to see if the field's ready to start picking on that offense. And then otherwise, man, I don't know if you've been like as frustrated, but like this opener thing coming back is just I don't like it. I don't like it. And it seems like and now we got that with Ohtani tonight. So it seems like the best pitcher on the slate is facing the Dodgers. and that's going to be annoying to deal with.
Yeah, it's a challenging pitching slate. And let me pull up the pitching board for a quick look, just real quick here. So I do have Logan Gilbert at the top of the board, and that's a 5-inning projection against that Red Sox team. And I think that's all we're getting out of Gilbert. First game in the show since April, through 70 some odd pitches in his last rehab, but still hitting the top of the board against what should be a gettable version of the Red Sox. Now there are still bats we like. There's young, very high end prospects. But Logan Gilbert is an excellent pitcher. And then we've got a lot of at least fair question marks, like an expensive Clark Schmidt against the hard-hitting Angels team in Yankee Stadium. Pepio is an interesting option, especially on DraftKings. And then, like you said, Dylan Cease, arguably the best starter on the slate at reasonable pricing, but facing the Dodgers, kind of offset just by that matchup a little bit here. But it's a really interesting but challenging top of the board. And then we've got a lot of shaky spots down here. We've got a guy like Sparius who's really talented, but I don't know that we're getting more than 4 innings as the bulk reliever. So we limit our shot at the win there. It's a short, weird pitching slate, and there's a lot of spots to target with bats. So, yeah, I'm with you on that as a general read.
Yeah, I think Gilbert and Clark Schmidt. I'll take a look at some ownerships, but I just feel like that's where the natural movement will be. Is picking on those high strikeout offenses, and Clark Schmidt doesn't have a range of outcomes where he can shove, but that offense is deadly.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get into some of the numbers. And Schmidt's good, talented third starter type guy. Like, I don't think anybody would argue with that too much. Third, fourth, anyway. But Angels, a lot of impact in those bats, but there's also some strikeouts there. Starting at the top of the board with Phillies and Nats, there is weather in the Washington area. But this is in Miami. Never mind. I was going to say, but not in Philly, but it doesn't matter. Weather in Washington, Yankee game should be fine. It says a couple sprinkles per Roth, and then some weather in Tampa Bay. You have any concerns about any of those spots as we just kind of dive in? The read in Washington is light rain, should be fine, but we know that team can be a little bit sensitive.
Yeah, I don't really think that's going to impact. If I was interested, I guess. Man, this might be the first. This is the true test of suck versus suck. I usually can point anyone against the Rockies, but I don't know about Jake Irvin. So I don't think I'm gonna let that. I'm not worried about the weather per se. And then in Tampa, every slate from the rest of the year is probably gonna have pop-up showers, yellow.
Exactly.
So you have to live with it.
Yeah, and just you get upside out of that ballpark more than anything. That you can see it with both those teams. Even run board updated as of a little while ago, but starting the board with Phillies and Marlins. Mick Abel against Sandy Alcantara, or at least this version of Sandy. It looks like he's been improving, just kind of looking at the game log, at least in the last 2. They've cleaned up a little bit, but it was against Colorado and Pittsburgh, 2 of the worst teams in baseball, most targetable teams in baseball. So kind of question marks there. We'll obviously talk about Sandy a little bit. Mick Abel had that great debut, has been pretty decent, but not pitching deep into games in the other ones. So up and down spots there. I like Philly's bats. Kind of obviously, even with continuing no Bryce Harper. What do you think of Marlins bats going the other way against some Mick Abel? Is there any upside in going to Marlins? Just kind of as like in a 4.22 implied total isn't off the board here.
Yeah, it seems, it seems like a tough team to trust with some of the other options on this slate. But I don't think most teams are out of play today. I think you look at Jesus Sanchez and Agustin Ramirez. It's nice that this lineup's already out as the 2 guys I would feature if I do get there. And the Marlins, they aggregate strikeout. I got 21.5% in this split since the beginning of last year, but it's really half and half. Like half their guys are not going to strike out, and then you got Stowers, Norby, and Myers that are striking out 1 and 3. So as far as the stack though, I've been kind of considering Abel as my my lean out of these 2.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to assume that eventually he's going to start realizing more strikeouts to 2 righties. His swing and strike rate has been pretty similar. It's off by like 1% versus what it was in the minor league level. And in the minors, he was striking out, almost 10.5 K per night. So there's probably a good 5 to 8% to carry that might end up catching up to him eventually. So I'm somewhat intrigued with that. And what we have seen him do is strike out lefties at a decent enough click, and maybe that'll neutralize your guys like Sanchez. So I don't think Marlins are off the board, but they're not
popping off the page for you as a lower owned team. Okay. Well, we've got a lot of mediocre teams at reasonable run totals to work with. So what about that? We've got Rockies and Nationals. As mentioned, a little bit of weather in the area, and this team does get somewhat sensitive to rain. They can be one of the more quick trigger teams as far as raining something out, but it seems like the forecast is fine. The Nats drawing a 5+ implied total, got to be on the board somewhat, going up against Carson Palmquist here. And then going the other way, as you mentioned, Jake Irvin, not exactly Jacob deGrom on the mound here. Peak form Jacob deGrom, mentioned somebody, Paul Skeens. I got to at least consider some Rockies bats as a cheap alternative. They do have very real power in that lineup. As I mentioned, Michael Talia back in the lineup with very real raw power. lacking a lot of other skills. But I got to think that the rocks are on the board a little bit at least. And how much Jake Irvin do we use? Like, we'll obviously get into this in a little bit more man by man detail, but just surface level, like Jake Irvin on your board, too popular.
I actually,
because we're going to be using pitchers against the Rockies, and we have been.
We have been.
Grant Holmes was 41% owned on FanDuel yesterday.
And we've seen that in the last week, and it's burned people more. But Talia is back, and he does strike out. But Irvin does come in as the third highest projected pitcher here. I'm kind of like, I just don't like to play bad pitchers, like, at all. And I usually have this mantra that bad hitting beats bad pitching at the major league level. Rockies are the ultimate test for that statement. But man, Irvin's 15% strikeout rate, no swing and strike stuff. Like, if you're gonna neutralize a 40% K rate of Ritter and Talia, like, I'm leaning way more towards the Rocky side. And if that's a little bit of leverage to get rid of the third highest owned pitcher on the board, I'll probably do that. And we know both these bullpens are attackable, so it could be a quality 9 innings, not pretty, but quality.
I'm just seeing that game with. I'm kind of surprised it's not more like a 9.5 or higher total. Maybe it's gone up by a half a run. But that is a really appealing spot on both sides. I just think the Nats will be more popular. The Rockies, like you said, maybe an interesting leverage spot. Moving on, Jose Soriano on the mound for the Angels going up against the Yanks with Clark Schmidt on the hill. We mentioned how Schmidt projects out pretty well, finding his strikeout form, more than 7 strikeouts in 3 of the last 4 games, finding a little bit of depth. We do know that Boone, once you get into the 6th, can be a little bit quick trigger and a little bit situational with it. But he's finished the 6th in 2 out of the last 3, pitched into the 6th in the 3rd one of those, and had an 8 strikeout day, 3 earned runs on 7 hits. Feel like Schmidt is effectively on the board. What's your upside for Jose Soriano, who struck out a dozen hitters over 7 innings against the Athletics his last time out, and can, as an attribute, keep the ball down somewhat effectively? So maybe impacts the power. For me, that's not really showing in the home run model. Yanks are pulling plenty of power against.
Yeah, I think the ground ball rate is definitely what's going to troll here. This is probably your best look at a playoff lineup for the Yankees. Take that for what you will. And if it delivers, hopefully I'll be happy. But yeah, I'm looking at this elite ground ball rate this year: 66% to lefties for Soriano, 67 to righties. If there's any ground ball rate like that you want it in Yankee Stadium. And his home run per nines since the beginning of last year are pretty elite. So this is unstoppable force, immovable object.
Yep, absolutely. And like I said, I mean, 4.93 implied totals doing its thing in the model. Yanks doing their thing in the model, just with all those swings, all those bats. We'll talk about it when I pull up the team by team, but it's going to be an interesting spot on both sides. I think that's a little bit of a 4 corners game where I do think Soriano is sneaky usable against the Yanks with some extra strikeouts in that lineup from time to time, and Stanton might be up there flailing to start. And then Clark Schmidt, obviously in play, but I think the Angels bats with some of their interesting power are at least on the table in Yankee Stadium. They're probably not going to pop. They're only drawing a mid-3s total. And again, Schmidt is good, but that's an interesting back and forth. Orioles and the Rays. I was getting some upside from the Rays. I think we can also get realistic upside from the O's. 4.5s total on either side of that one. And it's a matchup between Zach Eflin and Ryan Pepiot. Pepiot is a good pitcher. 8 strikeouts, 9 strikeouts in his last 2, couple earned runs against Texas and Boston. Fairly comparable matchup. I definitely think there's some power upside on the Orioles, and that's an appealing total with both those teams in the 4s. What do you think of Pepiot and Eflin here? Eflin's worked deep into games recently, too.
Yeah, Eflin might profile better as like a FanDuel click, get you deep into a quality start potentially. Pepiot is a little bit more intriguing for strikeouts, I think. This Orioles lineup comes out pretty lefty heavy, only 2 righties in the confirmed, and Pepiot has a 3.43 xFIP against lefties this season with almost a 29% K rate against lefties. So you might sneak into some extra upside at 7,600 on DraftKings. That's a pretty decent discrepancy from site to site, FanDuel to DraftKings. So yeah, I think he's a better DraftKings play.
Yeah. Is this a spot on a funky pitching slate with both those guys coming in 76, 78 at, I assume, pretty low ownership despite being talented enough at those prices in gettable enough matchups? Is that 4.5 run total maybe going to scare some people away to both these pitchers, where at those prices it becomes appealing to go for the double barrel here and throw the blanket over the win, like you like to say sometimes, and just try and pick that off on DraftKings and then just get creative with your bats and a lot of salary to spend?
Yeah, the rain and the park, there's enough there to spook people away. So I don't think that's a terrible approach. When I looked, Pepio was coming in with the fourth highest ownership projection, sitting just under Jake Irvin, but not much on Eflin for how small this slate is. So,
and honestly, if we're talking on talent, rather leaving matchup off the table, Ryan Pepio is a way better pitcher than Jake Irvin, and he's less expensive.
Oh, yeah. I think you
obviously the matchup swings that, but that's a really interesting back and forth as far as that ownership on DraftKings. And if you look down the board here, I pulled the pitching board back up on the screen for people that I was highlighting where Eflin and Pepio are. If you look down the board, it's Irvin. It's a reasonably priced Lance McCullers, but a really high danger spot against that Athletics team in that ballpark at 8,000. Giolito against Seattle, I don't really love at 73. Then you're dealing with Soriano against the Yanks, Alcantara at 72, Sears on the other side of that same Astros game, and then you're just kind of off the board.
Yeah.
So I do think that combo is at least kind of interesting. It's probably better to spread it, 8,400 Dylan Cease is obviously in the equation and put him together with Pepio, and I think you've probably got a better combo there. But if you're looking to go double spend down, I do think that's an interesting way to maybe think about it on DK.
Yeah, and we don't need to split the atom on a slate like this where every pitcher sucks. Sure. And there's probably like 5 pitchers that are going to score within 3 points of each other. But I say get uncomfortable in some spots, and I'm okay with that. But I'd rather be uncomfortable with a 30% K rate than Jake Irvin.
Exactly.
Even if it's the Rockies.
Exactly. That's the kind of stuff I try and preach all the time is like, all right, yes, we want to get contrarian, but we want to do it with at least some kind of positive attributes to point to. We don't want to just go to a guy who's terrible and happens to be low owned because he's terrible. Go to a guy who's good, but in a bad matchup. Moving on to our next one. We just did what? Orioles and Rays. That's Red Sox and the Mariners. Just a 7-run total there. I think reflecting Logan Gilbert to a degree. Lucas Giolito also, maybe up and down performances, I think is fair to say. He gave up 7 earned runs in an inning and 2/3 on 8 hits 2 starts ago, but pitched last one relatively clean. One run allowed, was not earned on 3 hits, 4 strikeouts, but 3 walks. Hasn't been good, but there have been some bright spots. A 7-inning start against Baltimore. So I think he's at least on the board against a Mariners team that can be up and down, can definitely obliterate pitchers and score a ton of runs and has a ton of power, but also has some strikeouts available in the lineup there. Are you seeing offensive upside on either side of this one with the limited Sox going up against Gilbert, who, as mentioned, going to be in a probably 5-inning start here given his return from the IL?
Yeah, I mean, I'm leaning Mariners. If I gotta get to an offense here, I think they're the more well-rounded, and we know they have some upside. This Red Sox team, there's definitely life. Like, I don't want to just poo-poo on Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer instantly, but man, and I know we can't quantify the mental, but that's got to be a weird plane flight last night for them to come out.
Yeah, all those kids just kind of like your first exposure to the show, and all of a sudden the team deals the bottom out from under the clubhouse and trades away your franchise player who, he's the guy that everybody was looking forward to getting there and filling out the lineup around. That's how you're supposed to execute this. So, yeah, you're totally right. Sorry to cut you off again, but that's got to be a weird room right now.
Yeah, and there's plenty of strikeouts in that lineup. So, I offensively, I lean way more toward the Mariners. And obviously pitching wise, I'm more into Gilbert, even if there's some question marks and low ceiling on basically any expectation today. But I think, just as a talented pitcher, Gilbert is pretty high up there. You probably have to really overpay for him if you don't expect him to go 80 plus pitches, but I really don't know what to expect from him. And I'm just trying to 5 innings of Gilbert still might get us 20 fantasy points. And I'm in.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's a 5-inning projection on my board, and he's at the top of it. It just might be, as you're alluding to, one of those situations where there's not as much ceiling on that. It's just kind of you're likely to get around that median, maybe a little bit more, but not much beyond. What about this next game in Sacramento? 586 implied total on the Astros side, kind of leading the way pretty clearly as far as an offense, but still maybe an underwhelming group that's mostly underperformed for the season with a couple bright spots and a couple recent improvements. 487 implied total on the Athletics, who have basically just been the Athletics all season long with plenty of power, but obviously some flaws up and down. JP Sears against Lance McCullers. Focus mostly on bats, sir?
Actually, like it just happened.
Oh,
McCullers was put on the IL. It's going to be Gusto.
Well then. All
so
right.
It shook up a lot. It shook up a lot.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that changes things. That's going to push some additional offensive upside toward the Athletics, I think. Gusto's not terrible or hasn't been terrible. Can't imagine he's here. Yeah, let me deal with that on the back end here.
Yeah. Gusto has been extreme splitty in my eyes. Lefties have been mashing him. He hasn't allowed a homer to righties yet, but his 50% fly ball rate, 9% overall barrel rate might become a problem on a surprise start, but maybe he knew it was coming and it wasn't that much of a surprise at all. And you're really going to test your limits in Sutter Health. I think unlike Soriano, the ball's not going straight to the ground. And this Athletics team, if you look at their home road splits, man, at home they enjoy home cooking and sleeping in their own bed. So this could be a surprise. I mean, their run total is 5.1. That's the Dodgers on this slate. So that I'm looking at the board where the Athletics now have the second highest run total. So I got to put some chips on that side of the table. And it looks like the Athletics might be priced for McCullers, and they're pretty cheap after you look at Jacob Wilson.
Yeah, that makes me real interested, and we'll get to those prices in just a sec. Let me just grab that updated run board too. Just to put it on the board here, I just swapped it out for Ryan Gusto. I did drop it by an inning. I had 6 on McCullers, and I cut it down to 5 on Gusto just for the wild card spot. Also for the likelihood that just going to got here at 71,800. McCullers was slotted in right here between Irvin and Giolito, and you can see there's a pretty noteworthy drop by several spots when I resort. He's going to come down the board compared to where McCullers was. So to me, that's a pretty big impact to the pitching board there. You do have another cheap option, but he's not super cheap at 8,000 on DraftKings. And again, that's just a high danger spot, and more so now. That was, let's see, 10.5 minus 128 plus 110. So yeah, it goes from minus 153 to minus 128 and 110 over there. So the A's get up over a 5 implied total as well.
Yeah, and that's number 2.
All right, taken care of. That's going to push offensive upside towards the Athletics. Rounding things out, Padres, Dodgers, as we started with Dylan Cease on the mound going up against the combination of Shohei Ohtani, and then I've got Ben Kasparius as the probable bulk reliever. This was his turn in the rotation, and then Ohtani drops in out of the sky to open. I think we maybe get 2 out of Ohtani. Do you have any upside for that, or is it just kind of knock Padres bats down? Is there any reason to consider Dodgers pitchers?
I mean, Kasparius is – he can rack up some Ks here, but Padres not really a high strikeout team. 6K. If it was any other slate, I wouldn't even really blink at it. But I do think pitching is so shallow today that crazier things have happened. But yeah, the matchup doesn't make a ton of sense. The Dodgers are dang near ready to hit the panic button. Giants on their tail making a move, and this division that's supposed to be theirs to run away with, all of a sudden is pretty tough, and the Padres always play the Dodgers tough. So I'm not that excited about it, but logistically, 6K with a 26% K rate and a 2.8 expected ERA isn't the craziest thing, and he could scoop and score a win. Just obviously can't get that quality start.
Yeah, the quality start obviously becomes problematic, and then the win comes down to scoring and everything. But obviously, Ohtani not on the board, so you're not putting Shohei Ohtani in your lineups on the mound. Can't do that, but I think 2 innings is in play, and then I gave Kasparius 4. But like you're saying, I think against a lot of other teams, even good teams, I'd at least be considering them a little bit more. But yeah, a lot of energy. This is going to be a high energy game for one thing, and then you just have a very low strikeout Padres as the opponent there. So over 4 innings, I don't love him to mash the strikeout total like he's very capable of. but he's excellent. I mean, he's got a ton of individual upside.
Yeah.
Diving in. Good.
No, I was agreeing.
Oh, all right. Let's see. Larry C in the chat. Thoughts on stack size on DK? Do you go mainly 5-man? I've been getting a bunch of 4-man, so I figured I'd ask. What's your general thoughts on sizing stacks and maxing? And do you go with that? Do you go double stack, like, stack and then like a 5-2, 5-3, 5 or like a 4-3, etc.?
Yeah,
or you just go like one main stack.
So I pretty much trust this. I use the stochastic sim tool, and they have it like surgical, where the 5-3s, 5-2s, the 4-3s, all that stuff. I just kind of let that ride. When I ever need to hand build, I almost always will go 5-stack on a slate with 6+ games like today. So yes, generally yes. Some slates are different, but I think this slate, with as bad as pitching is, I would probably trust a full 5-stack to start my approach today, because it does feel like some team's about to score 20 runs tonight.
Sure. And so within your process, though, as you're let's pull that a little bit more. You run your process on you mentioned stochastic, and the guys over at Awesome have some great tools, a lot of upside there. If you're using anybody, though, if you're just building in an optimizer and then you're using an old-fashioned sorting approach, or if you're just kind of running an optimizer and then looking at the scoring in those lineups and only trying to pick off a few of them, do you still, if you leave it open to constructions where you're getting some mixes of like 4-3, etc., within your DK builds, in addition to like your 5-3s, your 5-2-1s that you typically would look for, do you sort it down specifically so that, all right, let me look at the 5-man, the 5-2-1s, the 5-3s before I get into any of those oddballs? Because I feel like what Larry's getting at is something that I've noticed in a lot of sim results is they do push a lot of, if you let them, like 3-3 FanDuel builds where it's like 3-3-1-1 or 3-3, 3-3-2, where you're getting like the meat of 2 stacks, and then you're getting some tomato and lettuce slices from the other ones, the top off the sandwich, rather than getting the lower end bats that would typically come with filling out the stack entirely. And I think part of that is not necessarily feeding the probability so much as it's just kind of driving via the numbers and the pricing and looking to fill out maximizing salary to a degree. So I think there's just a difference of approach there. So do you actually sort down for those lineups within the sim? Because that's kind of how I do it still. I still look for those more stacked lineups.
No, I just kind of let it go. But if I'm simming for like a giant tournament, like I think I'm not as stuck on I need meat and potatoes, because probability versus probability, as weird as that sounds in baseball, is it gets crazy when you're facing 100,000 lineups versus less than 10,000 in like a limited entry. So like if I was running like a 20 max and the field is less than 5K, then I'd probably a little bit more hand picky. But I am generally once I set I do set my exposures based on what I want, like stack exposures, pitchers exposures. But then I just kind of like trust what I get. I don't really
just trying to ride with the numbers.
Yeah.
So check out those tools, gang. There's definitely a lot of good ways to build your lineups, and most of them should give you those, the ability to sort down if that's what you're looking for. Just being able to build the lineups exactly how you want them, like you're saying. So you get it, you feed it the settings, and a lot of people ask, what's the best optimizer to use? It's all about how many bells and whistles you really want. I use RG's optimizer currently because had falling out with the other major one that was around for a while. And now there's a bunch out there. Somebody was asking about one in Discord that's just straight up free. Obviously, you've got the other side of the spectrum with the guys over at Awesemo that do have quite a big price tag on their tools, but they're excellent. You see tons of their people up at the top of the board. In between that, you've got sites like acemine.io, our pals over there. Promo code rotoscouts. Gets you 20% off your first month. I almost said $1 a day. That's my price. Over at rotoscouts, $1 a day gets you access to all the projections. Hit the like button and the subscribe button on this channel, and make sure you're subscribing to Gundacker's channel. If you search Gundacker on YouTube, it'll pop up. You'll be able to subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. And Gun, tell them about just your website and what you're offering.
Yeah, so basically, I just cultivated a spreadsheet over the course of the last decade. world famous bomb detector. We've built out pitcher projection, stack rating, stuff like that. It's got a primitive feel to it. I think if you appreciate that old school spreadsheet approach, but I still have a lot of automated like flashy stuff as well. But I still every day, like the bulk of my stream is I'm going through and hand entering what I have as the K percentage on the pitcher, my out projection. So it's still got a lot of hands on to it. So I think a lot of our homies like kind of appreciate that because it's love of the game. It's not I'm just signing in, click optimize, sign out. I'm still just trying to be in tune with the game. So the people that do subscribe appreciate that much at least. And yeah, we're just out here having fun watching baseball.
That's it. It's all, yeah. Like you say, it's, a lot of people can provide projections, the curation of it, the attention from somebody who knows what he's doing, who knows both baseball and DFS, I think is very important to, weigh into things. So definitely appreciate you, buddy. And I'm sure all your people do as well. And I appreciate everybody who's joined the channel today and either found us for the first time or just coming to hang out when you're usually over the gun. Good to get everything together here. So let's talk Phillies Marlins to lead things off. Again, talk to me a little bit more about Mick Abel coming in 3 starts, 15 and a third, 23% strikeout against a 4.9% walk in the show so far, a 2.35 ERA, 3.53 xFIP. What do you like about the kid?
So he's come in with a 5-pitch mix, and it's not like he's unlucky with his fastball. His fastball is supposed to be getting beat up, and it is. But I look at the growing pains of these top pitchers coming into the majors, and usually they always stumble out of the gate. But I try to find some redemption, some redeeming qualities. And I think for Abel, what's most encouraging for me is that his swing and strike rate isn't that far from what it was in the minors. He's just got to find a way to start converting those strikeouts. And I think it's coming. And I think the Marlins, like I said, half of this team, not a big, heavy strikeout team, but looking at the grand scheme of this slate, Abel's coming in as a bottom 6 owned pitcher in a top pitcher's park against an offense that can certainly be a little bit anemic, even though they do have, some guys with high ISOs like Agustin Ramirez, Liam Hicks even. But we have seen a little flash of brilliance from Abel's ability to strike out at least lefties at a 30% clip so far, even though it's just 15 innings. And like I said, I think that 11% swing and strike rate, that 12% swing and strike rate, to me, feels like there's some positive regression for that 14% K rate that he's only converting right now on righties. So I think he's a work in progress, and it may blow up in our face, but he's 9K for a reason. And I think the ownership is probably the what's most appealing to me right now.
Yeah, just from that perspective, I mean, if you're thinking about the Phillies pitchers the rest of the week against this Marlins team, I don't know exactly who's stacked up the next couple of days, but I would imagine they're going to be pretty popular. And Mick Abel at least has earned a look here with what he's done in the show, what his general pedigree is, the fact that those are, higher prices than some, but not at all offensive prices against the Marlins team that we're almost always attacking. Looking down the Marlins lineup, like you said, there are some very low strikeout guys. Xavier Edwards up at the top, excellent for stolen base, some on base via the hit tool, a little bit via the walk tool as well. Jesus Sanchez, very real power upside, but definitely strikeouts there. Then you hit Otto Lopez, who gives you medium power, medium quality bat at best. I think as you look down the lineup, like another low strikeout guy, Eric Wagaman, mix and match quality hitter overall, 4 home runs and 261 this season with a 116 ISO. Liam Hicks, you mentioned 178 ISO, 127 WRC plus, moderately good slash line over 136 plate appearances at low strikeout, fairly high walk. But then you get Norby and Dan Myers, who I think you mentioned targeting before for some strikeout upside. So I'm seeing it more low threat with spots of high strikeout if you want to like weatherman it. I feel like it's that kind of a day where if the slate's not going there, it kind of makes me more interested in Mick Abel, especially at 85 on FanDuel. I think that just kind of works. Yeah.
So in perspective, he's got a 6% ownership projection on a slate like this, where
there you go.
Jake Irvin is like 3 times that, and I'm just like, I don't know. I'm thinking I'm here.
Yeah, that definitely definitely feels good. Is it a situation where if you're building a bunch and you end up with a fair share of Mick Abel, are you looking to take a few shares of Marlins as a hedge position? Is there enough upside for them? Because I do like Eso Sanchez as a bat. I think Agustin Ramirez has shown enough to at least be intriguing with 10 home runs and 196 plate appearances. Stowers has been good, but maybe a flash for a while there. And we'll see how sustainable it remains over the next 250 plate appearances. Not much else to work with. So is it a situation where if you did hedge, are you just going to the same Marlins that everybody who hedges is going to have? And does it gain you any ground?
Yeah, I do want to have both sides of this coin, and I don't think it's going to cost me much leverage to the field either, because the ownership on the Marlins is essentially the same as the ownership on Abel, and you could justify, like I said, Abel, even though I do like his potential strikeout stuff growing into it, the fastball that he's got so far has a 564 expected slug, the sinker 744 expected slug. I think he will find better versions of those pitches going forward in the major league level, but it's not untouchable, obviously. And he's being backed by a bullpen that is definitely targetable, and that bullpen used Jordan Romano yesterday for 21 pitches, so there's a good chance he doesn't come out today. And then we can dip into some of their more average bleed red guys like Taijuan Walker, Joe Ross, there you go, and guys like that. So it's not it's definitely not outside the realm of possibility for them to cash in, and the Phillies bullpen and the Marlins bullpen both attackable for some upside.
All right, so if we're building Marlin stacks, mostly looking at like an Edwards, Sanchez, Ramirez, Stowers as a 4-man foundation, and then just kind of mixing and matching your way through the rest of those guys. Who's the next man up in that equation? Like, who's your 5th man into a stack? Or if you want to replace one of those guys with somebody you think is a better option out of that group, feel free.
I think it's Hicks. Hicks has the highest, sample size is king, but Hicks has the highest WRC plus. Average is really respectable in this split, and then we talked about his ISO already. That's also amplified in this split, almost 200. So just 11% K rate and a 10% walk rate. So a great on base, great OPS. I think Hicks might be higher than Edwards for me.
Okay,
as far as ranking, but
okay,
you definitely
more
named the right. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. All right. So, and it looks kind of like whether, where we're positioning guys too, as well. If you wanted the back and forth at catcher, you could sacrifice the Agustin Ramirez. I think you probably get more out of him for your 3,800 at catcher, but you do have Hicks for a few hundred cheaper, depending on where you're looking to position these guys, what you're looking to buy. Like if that buys you a pitcher upgrade, the difference between what Hicks has done in his plate appearances versus Agustin Ramirez, a few spots higher, but 600 more expensive. I think that's a reasonable compromise. Just if you're like 3-manning this, let's say, and you've got your intent is to use the catcher from this team, but that $600 buys you an upgrade from a garbage pitcher to a mediocre one. I think it's probably at least worth exploring. What about the Phils on the other side? How much are we drawing of them against Sandy Alcantara? What do you think of Sandy at 17.7% strikeouts, 11% walks, or after 13 starts, 63 innings?
There was a time where I really would have been a happy man if Sandy got traded to the Yankees, and it felt like we had a mole in the Marlins department.
So when it happens in a few weeks, you're not going to be happy about it, is what you're saying?
I mean, maybe we could fix them like Luke Weaver, and
I'd at least be intrigued.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say no. Like you feel like there's a good pitcher in there, but post Tommy John, something's not clicking, and. The Phillies have certainly been clicking, even without Bryce Harper. Boy, they sure smacked around our good friend Jose Barrios when we couldn't celebrate it. So yeah, I definitely lean more of the Phillies here. Alcantara has been he's always been a contact guy, but right now the contact is something he's being punished for, especially against lefties. He is holding on a 3.35 xFIP against righties. It's the lefties that are really getting him, a 5.85 xFIP, 15% K rate, a 1.5 home run per 9, and a 17.5% walk rate to lefties. Still, the ground ball rate is on the fat side of the seesaw, but the 9.3%, the 8% barrel rate still can play. And one thing I do like to keep in mind against the Marlins is they give up the most stolen bases in baseball. And the Phillies are Phillies are sixth in stolen bases. And there's a pretty dramatic drop off after you get past the Rays and Cubs. For context, Rays 97 stolen bases, Cubs 90. I think a lot of those Rays stolen bases are no longer in the major leagues.
Yep.
But the Phillies are sixth with 63, and we know Trey Turner could certainly take advantage of that. So you get some extra fantasy points that sometimes get forgotten about. I don't love having to pay. Yeah, I don't love having to pay some of these prices for the Phillies, but much like I mentioned, this bullpen is attackable, and Alcantara certainly bleeds red.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just this form of Sandy, as mentioned, last 2 timeouts did show improved results, but then you look over to the teams that he faced, it was the Rockies and the Pirates. The Rockies in Miami, and then the Pirates have just been one of my favorite targets to go after with pitchers. So I have to downgrade those 2 spots at least a little compared to what he's done the entire rest of the season. I'm just seeing Phillies, and like you said, there are at least 2 problematic prices up toward the top of the board with the guys that you want most in Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber, but you can average those prices right down the board if you're just looking to stretch that stack out to even as a 3-man with Bowman Castellanos both at 38 on DraftKings, Max Kepler at 32 and getting cheaper after that. If you want to go more stolen base upside, you can drop down to Bryson Stott for 4. So I do think there's a lot of ways to, if you just 5-man that with those 2, let's say Bohm, we'll throw Castellanos in there, and then let's grab Stott at second. That's a 45.80 price. That's more than 4,600 a piece. Is more than manageable for the upside here, I think.
Yeah, no, and not too many pitchers are going to break the bank, and we can offset a lot of the pricing pretty quickly anyway.
Yeah, and again, if you wanted to go that route, and let's say we go save $600. By doing that, we're at 44.60, so 45. We save $100 on our average. You could definitely work Kemp into that equation too. 4,200 exactly if you go that route. What do you think of Kemp so far? Over 31 plate appearances, scored some runs, driven a few in, stolen a bag, getting on at a 387 clip, 120 WRC plus, just a 287 xWOBA with no barrels so far, but extremely limited sample of batted ball events to work with. You like the upside for him at cheap pricing, both corner and field spots available?
I'm gonna pull up his minor league. The lack of power is alarming, but in this park, like I said, against this team, if you can get on, I'm intrigued. He has 11 stolen bases this year in the minors, so a 1.0 OPS in the minors. So the OPS
decent power upside.
Yeah, it may not play based on the major league sample we got right now, but much like Abel, it might be on the way. So yeah, I think we play him while we can at that price point. He's still got an ISO that I don't think is probably representative of what he truly can do.
Yeah, and to put that on the board for people, this season so far as a 25-year-old in AAA, over 269 plate appearances, had 14 home runs, a 281 ISO, was slashing 313, 416, 594. So got the call to the show, has hit, but not for power so far. We'll see where it goes, but at the prices they're at, I'm intrigued at least. Good spot in the lineup, too, honestly. Probably more shares probably go toward Max Kepler, Bryson Stott in the 5 or the 7 spot. So I'm interested there. I'm happy enough at the cheap pricing that I will ignore the fact that he's slotting in and maybe taking a power bat off the board at a corner infield spot. What do you think down bottom of the lineup with Rafael Marchand at the catcher spot for 25 on DraftKings where you need it, 22 on FanDuel where it's probably more ignorable, and then a cheap Brandon Marsh, who I'm always at least somewhat interested in against gettable righties?
Yeah, Marsh is probably the more. I never say they're other than the strikeout rate. They have a pretty similar slash in my spreadsheet, but Marsh, I guess, is the more name brand for me. But I think they both make some sense here, especially Marsh. The 29% K rate in this split gets really, really neutralized versus that 15% K rate. And we know Sandy's weakness on the season has been his power to lefties. And his walk rate to lefties, and Marsh can walk. He has an 11% walk rate since the beginning of last year against righties. So I think both of those guys could be sneaky to get on base. Marsh is probably just a little bit more fun, but I think that catcher spot, I always like to fill that out with just randomly guys who are in my stack anyway. I say don't forget about him, and then you flip that order over, and you got Trey Turner and Schwarber with the ability to drive him in.
Yeah, that's what I love with Marsh is just that on base ability that he's demonstrated. You know, there have been a couple lower seasons over time than the 342 he's putting up right now, but he's demonstrably good at drawing walks, getting on base, and he hits the ball pretty hard. He doesn't have incredible barrels and hard hits, but 9-1 2 years ago, 10% last year, 48.7% hard hits for those 2 seasons. This year, basically in line with that. So he can give you on base. He can give you good wood on the ball from the bottom of the lineup. At worst, you're wrapping him around to those top guys. So yeah, I like that approach. Let's favorite thing from this game in terms of the 4 different sides of it.
I guess my stand of the day is looking like Mick Abel. This my night's gonna be over or table set real quick. I'm just looking for a way to get different on a sloppy slate, and Abel seems like the way that I want to do it, but I'm perfectly happy with my justification, right? Positive park, a beatable team, and stats that maybe have some catching up to do. And I don't really have to give up half like my portfolio to do it. Like I said, 6% ownership on a slate like this.
Easy to get ahead of that.
I could put 15, 18% of that and be bold and still not be broke if he does get shelled. And I'm sure I'm going to be invested in some Marlins stack. I'll probably have every team stacked somehow tonight.
Yeah, I think so. I think you get to a decent spread across the board with a fairly weak pitching slate. Some spots obviously higher than others, but I'm with you. Yeah, Mick Abel looking really interesting if he actually comes in at those ownership numbers here. Obviously a great matchup. Let's move on to the next one. Taking our time going through these. Carson Palmquist at 55.61 with his 14.8% strikeout rate over 5 starts, a 12% walk rate, a 7.77 ERA with a 6.16 xFIP, a 4.63% home run rate allowed on 13.2% barrels. How excited are we to roster the Nationals against him?
Yeah, I'd definitely take a piece of that. Nationals lineup is just fun to play. Overall this season, pretty balanced with how they score their runs, and they're pretty consistent with it too. So I like what they bring to the table, and I love picking on Rockies pitchers. So yes,
yeah, very much so. I feel like they're going to be chalky, but for good reason. I think those are bats that you can work with. There's a lot of cheap options in the lineup. There's no Nathaniel Lowe in the lineup today. We get Alex Call up at the top, who's typically pretty good against lefties. We've got a very gettable lefty on the mound. So all systems go for the Nats. You've got the splits numbers directly in front of you, so you can give them to us. But top of my head, Woods, Abrams, no real concerns against lefties, and especially not a bad lefty like this. We don't really discount those two, right?
Yeah, I got a 135 ISO for Wood against lefty. It's not the worst, but the 731 OPS still plays. 165 for Abrams. And I'm with you. I would assume, Nationals are chalky with a 5-run total in this matchup. Hey, ownership projections could be wrong. But you'd be surprised. The number 6 has been pretty common so far. And it's at 6.
All right. That's interesting. Yeah, that would push some upside here for sure. Very interesting. Alex Call is really cheap to bolt on to those two guys up at the top of the lineup. That's a reasonable correlated scoring option, if nothing else, from the right side. Then we get into Alex Chaparro. We haven't gotten much in. Well, it's only 6 plate appearances. Can't really say I haven't gotten much. Should be capable of putting decent bat on the ball from the right side. It is kind of an underwhelming lineup as you look down the rest of it, though. Ahmed Rosario is kind of just an average hitter at this point at best. Brady House in his debut, only available so far on FanDuel, but for the dead men, but he's a shortstop. I don't know if I really necessarily want to go that route, but it would help fill out a national stack in a 4-man on FanDuel, and it would be a cheap way to do it. You get Riley Adams, Dalen Lyle, Jacob Young. What do we like from, say, 4 down after the top 3 in the Nationals lineup? Where are you looking?
I think there's a lot of unknown in the lineup as far as name value goes for the casual player. But if you do a little bit of digging, you can get excited about Chaparro's minor league numbers. He's a 996 OPS, 296 average, 6 bombs, and Brady House, 872 OPS, 300 plus average, 13 bombs. So there's some pop here. And usually, like I said, there's always some growing pains from minor leagues to the major leagues. But the Rockies pitching,
yeah, it's not like they're facing a major league pitcher at least so far.
Yeah, so I think if those stats start playing sooner than later, or even if they just show up today, You could, people are like, who's Brady House? He's 2K. I don't know who this guy. Like, there's a 2100 Chopper Road 2000 Brady House. If you stack the nets, you could definitely get any pitcher you want. You dang sure can get just about any substack you can to supplement this stack, and it really wipes off the ick on the Wood and Abrams price tag if you're not in love with maybe the split here. So I think getting to just clicking MILB and typing a player's name and realizing, hey, these guys might have some pop in their bones.
Yeah. House checking in first, in his debut with a 6.15 for me in my home run model, which scales to, 10 being your, this is a good shot to hit a home run kind of a number, the magic number, as I call it. It's right around where I've got Riley Adams today. It's a couple points off of where Chapato lands. Again, there is a power in that bat, hopefully, at the major league level. And then it's a little bit off of Wood and CJ Abrams, who are showing plenty of power upside against a high contact lefty who's given up so much power and premium contact. It just mostly eradicates those lefty concerns. Then we get into the Rockies bullpen and we're off and running. So I like the top end there. Any love for like Dalen Lyle, Jacob Young down the bottom? Young can steal you a bag from time to time, but doesn't really do much else.
Yeah, and Dalen Lyle is another one of those guys that his minor league slash line is so much better than his major league so far. And this is as minor league pitching as you're gonna get. 328 batting average in the minors, 880 OPS, 12 stolen bases, by the way, and 195 at bat. So well-rounded, balanced ability to score some fantasy points through and through this Nats lineup. And if that ownership holds up, I'm very interested, especially on FanDuel. It is sucked you don't get House on DraftKings because he's looking pretty fun as a click.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, does that diminish the national stack in your mind a little bit on DK if we don't get House over there? Because I was just looking at like filling that out. I was going to do the average thing and say like, all right, those top four, you get those four and you're at 44.25 so far. You could go to Rosario, sure. You could go Riley and take the cheap catcher off the board, which is probably the way to do it, I would think. And you're at 4,000 exactly. But you could easily go to an even cheaper if you needed it. Lyle there at 39.40.
Yeah, I mean,
to go to your point. So
it definitely takes a little edge off the top, especially like he's in the middle of the order too. It's not like some random 8-hole guy.
Yeah, if you swapped him and Lyle in the lineup, no problem. You would just go Lyle. But yeah, having that gap there and having him in such a key spot in that stack is kind of annoying. Hopefully it just parachutes into the slate in the next hour. Yeah, I think they cut it at some point. I'm not sure when the last check for that is, but what about the other side of this one? Going up against the super popular Jake Irvin, like we've alluded to a few times. He's coming in with a 4.21 ERA, a 4.69 xFIP. He can be effective from time to time, but he's allowing 12.9% barrels against a team that has five guys with double-digit barrel rates this season. They're terrible. We don't want to look very hard at their WRC plus or their strikeout rates or anything like that when we consider these Rockies, but they can barrel the ball. And he allows plenty of barrels, plenty of fly balls. 3.69% home runs is kind of managed on this kind of contact. Should be higher. Stuff Plus doesn't think anything of him. Talk to me about Rocky's bats. And then like weave Jake Irvin into that, how much you would want him at 8,000 when he's going to be crazy popular here.
Only 3 pitchers in baseball have a higher barrel rate than Jake Irvin.
Ooh,
Kate Povich, Brandon Pfaadt, and Chase Dollander. And I get it. I've fell into the laziness of pitching anyone against the Rockies, but it's usually somebody with more than a 7% swinging strike rate. I mean, that's Bartolo Colon final season-esque. And I if it works, it works. I get it. Rockies suck. Heck, I was actually kind of an advocate in the last couple of days of Rockies were maybe a little more scrappy than people think. And then today we wake up and Talia is back in the lineup, and that guy he strikes out. So I certainly understand why people are here. I hope that it fails because I just don't like playing bad pitchers. I just don't like doing it. And Jake Irvin is a bad pitcher, 5.38 expected ERA. And like we mentioned, a 4th highest barrel rate. If that is optimal, I lose. I just lose, man. And
the run numbers in your portfolio tonight, more Rockies bats than Jake Irvin.
Yeah, and I might, when chalk gets so coagulated, like on a big enough slate where something's at 20%, I try to pick apart at it. Like 20, like for me, that's the rake, right? Can Jake Irvin make contests rake free tonight at 19% owned and fail? And then I'm over here playing rake free baseball and hoping for my lineups to catch up. Like how often do I truly believe that Jake Irvin is the nuts tonight? And I got no faith in his overall metrics. So I might actually have a 0% share of Irvin. I mean, 19% is a lot.
I think that's A, entirely reasonable as an approach, and B, a really strong way to look at a slate. Just when you talk about, it takes the rake off the board and then you're playing rake free. That's a really interesting, really sharp way to look at things. And yeah, I don't disagree. I just have no love for this pitcher in this spot. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he succeeds, has a decent enough day, keeps them mostly off the board, even finds a couple strikeouts along the way. But I don't need to be a part of it. If that happens, it happens, like you said. So yeah, I'm mostly with you. Maybe if I build like 20 lineups tonight, maybe a share or two works its way in around the edges. But it's not like he's uniquely cheap here or anything at 8,000. Those are only workable prices, and he gives you no ceiling on that. So I'd just rather go different directions. Outside of Michael Talia, at the bottom of the lineup, who is going to be my answer, who's your favorite Rockies bat to work with here?
Problem. I guess I want to pick on Irvin generally with a lefty. So I guess Ryan McMahon.
Okay. All right. Yeah, they are rolling a bunch of righties at us. If you want to give them, one kind of a ding there, that is a little bit of a bummer. What about if we're looking for lefties a couple spots after that, though? Mickey Moniak, who quietly putting decent bat on ball, 8.8% barrels, 46.4% hard hits from the former number one overall, who we have seen, succeed to degrees in flashes for things like putting good bat on ball and finding a few home runs in his career. Right now, 7 home runs in 183 chances, a bad slash line, but a 201 ISO for hunting for power from the left side.
Yeah, it's not going to be fun clicking any Rockies bat, but yes, Moniak it would probably be 3 for me. But with McMahon, Talia, Moniak, I don't want to mention it, but Jake Irvin can stifle righties with a 51% ground ball rate.
Okay, something to note, especially when we're home run hunting a little bit with this team, though. That is noteworthy when they're stacked up like this with righties.
Yeah, and most of his power in the last 3 years has been to lefty. So I'm seeing the path for the fish, but I just don't want to do it.
I'm with you. But maybe an impact for like the degree to how much we exaggerate wanting to actually use Rockies bats for sure. Up at the top of the lineup, we do have 3 righties who have been decent this year, especially when we're talking about the Rockies, a 106, a 117, and a 114 WRC plus for Jordan Beck, Tyler Freeman, Hunter Goodman. Goodman, the most realistic power upside and holding his own in terms of the slash line there. Beck has shown like medium grade quality power. Do you have a favorite amongst those guys? If you're building Rocky stacks, you're looking to get 3 or at least 2 out of 3 of those guys in, or you're just kind of spreading out across the stack and you'll take what comes?
Yeah, I was like I'm prioritizing or ranking Rockies here, but I think just betting on talent, Goodman kind of becomes the first righty I want to get a piece of. And if Beck and Freeman get involved, I think with Irvin, he's being backed by just as bad of a bullpen. So if they can get him out there early, which I don't know, maybe we can flip this split around and get lucky with a pitcher that either doesn't have a 51% ground ball rate, or let me see if they get any lefties that might be due up today. Let's see, Jose Furr, he pitched 2 days ago, and they only have 1 lefty, so it might be a lot of righties tonight.
Okay.
Well, I guess, yeah, but not everyone has a 51% ground ball rate. So yeah, I no priority, but Hunter Goodman would be the first righty I would want past that and to the top of the order. He is the highest ISO on the team in this split.
Yeah, he's been pretty tremendous this year at 284, 326, 494, 211 slug, a 114 WRC plus, 11 homers in 279 chances, strong barrel and hard hit rates. There are some strikeouts there, but getting him as a $3,900 catcher with that kind of power upside is at least interesting when you're going to this team. What about Tyler Estrada, who you mentioned early in, I think before we were on the air, even 3,200 at second base, 2,600 in the mix, at least for shares at a kind of cheapo position. Where do you approach second base like I do? Unless you're getting a star, you're just you're kind of looking to fill it out with like a value-ish kind of a play.
Yeah, I don't think I draft my lineups like you do. I just honor the stack.
Sure.
I'm with you in general though. Like if I have to
when I ask that,
these names,
that's what I mean. Yeah, when I ask that, I mean like if you're hand building a lineup, like and you're thinking about it that way, would you kind of think about second base that way?
Yeah, I mean it's if you click Tyler Estrada and you're looking at his meager numbers and you're like, yeah, I know this is the stack, but man, Max Muncy's been really good, and I got the 2K left over. Like it's hard, and it's just hard to look away from that. So I try to numb myself to that. But yeah, Estrada's,
and I think going back to what we were saying earlier, I do think that's one spot where like optimizer sim results sometimes will, if you're allowing those like smaller builds and more randomized spots, I think that's where those are filling in those gaps somewhat. And that's why guys like Larry, who asked that question earlier, are seeing more like, oh, I'm seeing 4-man stacks. And then it would pivot over just based on projection and having the salary to that Muncy kind of a play or whatever. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, I just make an observation. I know the Rockies are so bad, but why is Tyler Estrada your 5-hole hitter? Look at every stat line on this team. Is that not a rally killer right in the middle of a lineup? Holy crap.
Yeah, like you're going to call Talia up, who, if people out there weren't paying attention, was absolutely destroying his demotion to AAA. He had 3 home runs in a handful of games and a ton of RBIs and so on and so forth. Just call him back up and put him in the 5 spot, put him in the 6 spot, move Brenton Doyle up, use Mickey Moniak, and Tyler Estrada should be at the very top or the very bottom of this lineup. In no way should he be in the heart of this lineup. He has hit a couple of home runs over the years. I mean, what was his big year? He hit 9 last year in 381 chances, 14 in 530 with 23 stolen bases. I believe that's the year I'm thinking of. Like, that's not a premium bat in the heart of your lineup by any measure.
Yeah, and he doesn't strike out a ton, but he doesn't walk much either. He's just
kind of there. Yeah, Babbitt focused guy who's just kind of there, which I guess does to a degree play in Coors Field. Ryan Ritter at the very bottom for 29-24, just to round out the Rockies discussion. What do you know about him?
He doesn't have enough stats yet for my spreadsheet to pick up on it. Looking at a quick glimpse at his minor league card, 300 plus average, 1.OPS, 3 SBs on 16 bombs. That dog will hunt. That guy should be batting 5th. What are we doing? Yeah, right. So,
24-20 last year in 2023 in 525 plate appearances in Double-A. It looks like too.
Yeah, I'm in on that. I like that.
Yeah, solid minor league numbers. Interesting enough way to fill out shortstop at a cheap price. Favorite side of this game? Is it the maybe under-owned Rockies bats? Is it the Nationals? What are we doing here?
It's definitely the Nationals. I just, at least when I'm looking at their colors on my spreadsheet, it's way more green than the Rockies. I'm hoping that the Rockies, I hope they deliver. I'm really just hoping that Jake Irvin has 10 fantasy points and everyone's an idiot for paying AK for 10 fantasy points. So even if he doesn't get blown up, I'm nervous about it. But yeah, I definitely prefer the Nationals pre-flop with logic in mind.
Yeah, and that's what I landed on when I was just glancing at this slate before like getting out of bed this morning. I just try and hand build a lineup and lock in some placeholders, and that's where I went. And I'm not regretting it at all. I'm very much on the National side of that one, but I'm at least intrigued by the Rockies. Angels against the Yanks. Talked about Jose Soriano a little bit, coming in with a negative 4.2 degree average launch angle. We talk about all the ground balls, the ability to check power, just a 0.88% at home run rate so far over 14 starts, 3.86 ERA, a 3.65 xFIP. Too many walks and not enough strikeouts is where we've kind of gotten limited with Soriano. I think those of us who were at least looking at him early this season were expecting maybe some more strikeouts to come along, and they really haven't, despite a decent enough 10.8% swinging. Is he just losing too much around the edges, and that's where some of those walks and the lack of CSW and the lack of putting guys away are coming from? And with that, at 7,000 to 8,300, how usable is he against a Yankees team that, if nothing else, can get got for strikeouts?
Yeah, and with Stanton coming back, Stanton didn't homer in his minor league rehab stuff either, so he might still be seeking his swing. I really don't have an explanation for his walk rate. Usually these guys that don't have massive K numbers but heavy ground ball guys never struggle with walks. They're pitching the contact by design. But this guy is walking guys like you want them to hit the ball. They just put it, it's like Framber Valdez. You want him to hit the ball, and your defense does the work. So I don't know why he's wasting so many pitches. And yeah, this one's gonna pucker you up here. I think I like the thought of the Yankees 5-run total. I like the thought of the super team, but I also have a hat that may be affecting my brainwaves right now. If there is a time, and play devil's advocate here, to maybe pick on this team, coming from a rough stretch in Fenway over the weekend, their bullpen is a little bit injured right now. And Stanton, it's not like he hit 4 homers in the same game yesterday and they're like, all right, we're back. This is certainly a lineup that can strike out. Just Bellinger and DJ LeMahieu have sub 20% K rate since the beginning of last year in the split. And they put the ball on the ground. The pushback to the pushback is the bullpen sucks, and the Yankees will take their walks. So Soriano is walking guys unless he's getting grounded double plays here. He could be in a jam real fast with ducks on the pond, traffic on the bases, and maybe he might be worth looking at to see how he pitches with guys on and guys off. Stretch versus windup. But yeah, I think this is the ultimate. I don't know what's going to happen, and this might be the first 4-corner game of the night for me.
Yeah, there are so many factors in play with this Yankees lineup against that pitcher and just the current form. Does have a premium velo sinker at 97.1 that I think misses the zone from time to time, and that's where some of the walk comes from, some of the missed pitches. But yeah, just a weird collision of factors there when you think about the ground ball rate and what he does. If you look back over time, it was a negative 0.9 degree average launch last year. Similar results as far as limiting home runs. Year before, didn't really allow many home runs despite a 9.1% barrel on 6.8 degrees of average launch, which is still tremendous. That was in relief. So it's a demonstrable trait for him. What it's not doing, though, for me, is taking the Yankees off the board in terms of the power model. You see a lot of guys like him, like Framber, where it comes in, everybody's below a 10, and you're barely checking in with guys that are normally decent home run options before 5, above even 5. 3 guys against this pitcher above my magic number with Stanton, and who knows what that really looks like, but maybe a more believable Ben Rice and Aaron Judge. Rice still clinging to above the magic number, and Judgey well above it at 15.5 with his 26 home runs. Talk to me about the reality of the Yankees' power and like how it collides with those runs and how much you really want to chase that when only Aaron Judge is expensive, really, if we're looking at it.
Yeah, I'm with you. The Yankees are not getting pushed down on the bomb detector. Judge is second to Ohtani.
There we go. It's difficult to suppress those guys.
It really is.
Yeah.
And usually when it happens, it's based on some sample size glitch, and this we got plenty of sample size to be had here, and we do get the short porch for a lefty. So
sure.
Yeah, I'm not abandoning ship here, and this Angels bullpen is a tournament winner too. You put them in Yankee Stadium, and bad things happen to good people. So I'm in on the Yankees, but I try to be not rose-colored glasses. But like I said, this is your September lineup unless there's a big trade in the coming weeks.
Yeah, for sure. And we're getting a good look at it, hopefully, now at the bottom of the lineup for the Yanks. Second base, DJ LeMahieu, 3,100, 2,700, multi-position eligible on FanDuel, 86 plate appearances, checking in with 2 home runs, but kind of more interestingly to me, getting on base at a 349 clip, putting usual good DJ LeMahieu type wood on the ball, 6.8% barrel, 49.2 on the hard hits, creating runs, 108 WRC plus. never was as lost, I think, as maybe all of us were kind of lamenting after they gave him the contract a few years ago. Last year was the lost year. 228 plate appearances was just bad when we had him and wasn't there much. But the year before, I might have mentioned this the last time we got together for a show. I was looking at his numbers when he first came back, and it was more plate appearances than I remembered. He was there for 562, almost a full season. 243, 327, 390 was not the hitter they signed or they want him to be, but hit 15 home runs, was a slightly positive run creator at 101 WRC plus. If you're just looking for some positive attributes, and then the year before that got on at a 357 clip, created a run 16% better than average, and was much more like DJ LeMahieu. So I guess what I'm rounding around to is this 2025 version maybe more 23, 22? Maybe it's not the 2020, an earlier version, but can we at least maybe expect the guy from 2 years ago, 3 years ago? It's kind of looking that way.
I certainly will hope for it. And I had a thought watching the game the other day is, man, that 9-hole might be the spot for him. There's no pressure down there. He's such an elite hitter. Even if his body's not hitting well, his mind can see stuff and pass it along to others. And I guess
some pitches, foul some balls off, extend some plate appearances, if nothing else down there.
And then go whisper in Ben Rice's ear and tell him what to look for.
Sure.
And Goldie's not in this lineup. Yeah, it's going to be. I would say I'm not going to say DJ's playing for a job, but I think if we're looking at trade watch down the stretch here, I think LeMahieu can play himself out of a job. So maybe that's a factor for him. But I'm hoping that he's the pure contact guy, the bottom of the order. Even if he isn't out, be a 6-pitch out, 7-pitch out, and tax him up. But I've been encouraged with some of his at bats in the last week.
Yeah, and for our purposes, helps lower the price. Slots in at second base. You can move Jazz over to third on both sites if you want them both. Jazz at a fair price, 51.35, going up against a righty who should at least allow some balls in play. Jazz can hit the ball very hard, but by his own account, since returning, is swinging the bat, and it's noticeable in his bat speed number so far at like 75% aggressiveness. Does that knock him down a peg as compared to say the Anthony Volpes of the world, the Cody Bellingers of the world in this lineup, or you just kind of all systems go with Jazz, not going to worry about something like that?
I'm definitely worried, but I want Jazz to be good, and he seems to be better in Yankee Stadium. Him and Volpe got to be the short porch kings, man. I swear every time they homer, it's barely a homer over the short porch. So DJ could definitely go Oppo, but yeah. I was just thinking about looking at this lineup and thinking about Goldie. Man, how do we get Goldie in this lineup? And I think I heard them say Ben Rice could be the catcher, but I don't know if I want Austin Wells out of the lineup. So this outfield is cluttered, man. I need Trent Grisham to suck again or something. This is a hard decision.
I think that's kind of been our wild card, is the fact that Trent Grisham's actually been good out there and like good at the plate, and he's kind of fitting in nicely right now. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it comes together. I didn't notice that until you said it. This lineup is just kind of so name brand and high end as you look up and down it that I didn't even notice they're missing one of their best hitters in Goldie right now. But yeah, working him in and around the edges is going to be really, really challenging. The interesting question is, do the Red Sox hate the Yankees so much, and is it that real of a rivalry that the Yankees didn't get a phone call about Rafi Devers maybe being on the table?
I don't even know how that would have worked, but I had to believe that a lot of teams didn't get a phone call because the package they got is just kind of crazy.
Yeah, like we were talking about at the beginning of the show, it kind of suggests that they just pulled the trigger too quick. But man, this team could use a left-handed hitting thumper at third base, and if he's actually willing to play in the infield, boy, that could have fit nicely. Anyway, DFS wise, Trent Grisham or Ben Rice, 4,500 or 4,300 outfield first base up at the top of the lineup. If you're just looking to grab a lefty for some power upside, and you have to decide between one of those two guys, who do you prefer?
Man, they are awfully similar in just about every slash I'm looking at. I seem to gravitate more towards Ben Rice. I don't know if it's the immediate touch to Judge being his protection or what. It's not a snap call. It's more of a coin flip than it should be. But I lean Ben Rice. But Trent Grisham, he does have a higher WRC plus since the beginning of last year against righty. So I wouldn't fault you for going either way, but I think I lean Ben Rice.
Yeah, I think I lean Ben Rice a little bit as well. I just, for whatever reason, I consider it a little bit more real than Trent Grisham's, numbers, despite the fact that, Rice slots in at 227, 311, 460. We're just looking at, monster power upside. He's relatively low strikeout, decent walk, but Trent Grisham's doing all those things too. So, I mean, at a point, I'm going to have to stop judging Trent Grisham the way I'm accustomed to, but I'm just not there yet. Judge is obvious in the heart of the lineup. And then how much are you going to get to Stanton here? Let's say if you built 10 Yankee stacks, how many of those is Giancarlo Stanton in at 4,000, 2,800 on FanDuel?
Maybe two. So I hope I'm wrong, but Stanton and again, we can't quantify streaks, blah, blah, blah. Stanton seems the most hot, cold guy that we have. When he's on, you don't want to face him. And the fact that, in his rehab stuff, hitting 270, not too bad. 3 hits out of 11 at-bats. No homers. I just feel like it's going to take a while to click, and that he could certainly be a guy that looks lost at the plate. And against a heavy ground ball guy, I'm a little bit concerned about that.
And we've seen him take time to find his stroke before, kind of like you're saying, not only streaky, but sometimes can take a moment to really get started. And it seems like it's either on or off, to your point about the streakiness. Either he's going to arrive and rock 2 home runs tonight and hit 10 in the next 2 weeks and then probably go on the IL again, or it's going to take him a while to catch up. There's really rarely a lot of in between it with Stanton, but I got to show it one more time. I've talked about this throughout the season, and when we talk about Giancarlo Stanton, it's all about this dude's swing, right? So this is something I've referred to all year. This little graph is fast swing rate up over here, and then average bat speed down over here. This is last year. This is 2024. This is top 200 by swings. And you've got this little island of hitters. This is the island that I talk about a lot, where it's interesting because you've got Joe Adell there. You've got Christopher Morel, Matt Chapman. The guy in the middle there is Shohei Ohtani. It's Jordan Alvarez. It's Julio Rodriguez. Around those guys and Gunnar Henderson. I thought that was a really interesting group of hitters, and a reason that I continue to justify Joe Adell's existence. Yeah. Then you go up the graph, you've got Aaron Judge, Kyle Schwarber, and then very interesting O'Neal Cruz over here. And then you have to go all the way to up over here to find where Giancarlo Stanton is. If you can't see him for whatever reason on your screen, this is Giancarlo Stanton.
Yeah.
These are all the other major power bats in the league. That's how offset his fast swing rate and fast swing speed were last year before he maybe died. Again, to reiterate, dude couldn't swing a bat a month ago because both elbows, he couldn't do this anymore. So who the hell knows what it looks like? But man, was it something to see when he was healthy.
I think that chart makes so much sense because, we talk about some of these legendary hitters, the Barry Bonds, the Ken, their sweet swings. Stan has the ugliest, most violent swing, but it worked. Right. I think that chart explains it.
Yeah, and it just obliterates baseballs when he connects. Last season, 20.7% barrel, 55.1% hard hits. Dude can mash when it's going right. He's in my lineups if I'm stacking Yankees, but it's going to be a challenging spot. And again, there is a visible downside with Soriano. Let's fly through some of these Angels bats. We probably do need to pick up the pace a little bit. We've been luxuriating in these games. But Zach Neto up at the top, 56, 36 in my mind. Fairly priced for the power, the speed upside for what we're looking for. You get a correlated scoring guy like Shanuel, and I'm sure we've got the confirmed here.
Yeah.
Shanuel's in the 2 spot, and then we go on. Talk to me, just what do you like about the Angels, and how much Clark Schmidt do you want on the other side?
Yeah, I mean, this is close to a coin flip too. I would say Clark Schmidt, his weaknesses tend to come against lefties, and the Angels come out pretty righty heavy on a nightly basis, and their lefty is Shanuel and Rengifo. And that's not a lot of pop in there. So there's certainly an avenue where we can lean more into his 26.5% K rate to righties, his 0.36 home run per 9. But one thing that doesn't make a ton of sense to me, and I guess maybe the 6% barrel rate's holding it down, he has almost a 30% line drive rate to righties and just a 28.8% ground ball rate to righties so far this season, which is less than last year. So it feels like he might be a little bit on the lucky end when it comes to maybe some power or just really some power, but the xFIP is on his side. It's not like it's betraying the xFIP or polar opposite. So I am leaning a little bit more towards the Clark Schmidt side of the strikeouts and neutralizing his weaknesses, which is the lefties. But I'm on every side of this game.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair approach. I'm starting to see it that way as well as you're talking it through with Schmidt, especially the lefty thing. Shanuel, kind of a non-threatening lefty. There is the factor of, any lefty that just lofts the ball into the air at Yankee Stadium could easily put one into the short porch. But, hopefully we negate that with the fact that it hasn't really been burning Schmidt, despite a little bit of launch in there, 16.2 degree average launch, and the lack of ground balls that you mentioned. He's limited barrels, 6.2% allowed so far, 34.5% hard hits, and 87.8 miles an hour of exit velo, more to the point. So at least, when the fly balls are happening, it's not really been premium fly balls. Cool night in the Bronx to boot, not exactly a typical June 16th kind of a night here. Cool, little bit of rain in the area, so could benefit pitching a little bit. And you've got an Angels team that, ignoring Christian Moore, their high-end rookie at the bottom of the lineup, who's only made 7 plate appearances, 24.9% average strikeout rate for this 8-man above him, and he's struck out quite a few times in his 7 plate appearances already. So yeah, I do think that pushes the reality of the upside for Clark Schmidt at his 25.2% strikeouts. Which of the Angels bats are you really focusing on, especially with the kind of lack of high-end lefties here, and you can't say Mike Trout?
I guess probably Neto, top of the lineup here. He's pretty talented. Yeah, I guess probably Zach Neto.
Yeah, tons of barrels, hard hits, as mentioned before, some stolen base upside. Needs to get on base a little bit more to help exploit that and just kind of feed the beast here down lineup. But Shanuel does that a ton. Should they maybe consider just flopping those 2 hitters? Going Shanuel 1? I think we talked about this the last time around.
I if I'm not getting power out of my leadoff spot, I want to see low strikeout, high walk rate, somebody that's going to give you immediate information on pitches, those guys standing in the on-deck circle. So if Shanuel's 15% K rate, 12% walk rate, that's going to show you what a pitcher's working with off the rip. And then you get guys like Mike Trout and Neto be able to read those pitches and make a play on it. So, yeah, I would flip it. But then you have just like a really long stretch of righties, and maybe that's what they're trying to avoid. But it really doesn't matter with one lefty.
Yeah. Another team that could have greatly benefited from the presence of a monster thumper at third base from the left side, if you think about it. A lot of power through this team, though, obviously, with Mike Trout. 5,000, 3,300 is wildly reasonable in my mind. He's pretty cheap for the upside. He's hit 11 home runs and 183 chances this year. Looking a whole hell of a lot like Mike Trout playing in Yankee Stadium. I expect him to mash. I'm definitely going that way. And you get to a cheap $4,200, $3,100 Taylor Ward, who has 18 home runs this year. I get that Jorge Soler is struggling, but at least he's put 10.3% barrels on the ball for the cheap price. Again, just buying barrels in this stadium from a fly ball pitcher could be worth a little bit. And then interesting bats like Logan O'Hoppe and Joe Adell, who's a member of that little swing island I was just talking about. So there's interesting power through the middle. Do you have a favorite out of like the Ward, Soler, O'Hoppe, Adell group?
Man. Probably O'Hoppe, but I don't really have any emotional attachment to that answer.
All right. So just a little back and forth, take what you get there. And then rounding things out, just to put it out there for people at 3,000 at second base and at 2,300 at second base. Don't think anything of Christian Moore's 0 across the board in his 7 plate appearances. Kid's supposed to be a little bit of a hitter, got here in an awful hurry after getting drafted last year. So definitely consider some shares of him as a cheap option going away from the Angels. Favorite thing in this game?
Clark Schmidt.
Ooh, all right. I like it. What's his ownership looking like? Is he like only kind of mid-board? Is he above or below Jake Irvin?
He's above. He's number 2 on the board.
Okay. So a popular collection.
Yeah.
All right. That's all right. We're going to be dealing with chalk at some point with something because there's just so many that's a big bright spot and everything else sucks on like a few different sides of this thing. So I think one way or the other, you're kind of holding your nose on some part of this slate and you're kind of playing some chalk on this slate. Speaking of, Orioles bats, Rays bats, but we talked about the pitchers in this one a little bit. I think the pitchers will be lower owned and at those interesting prices on DraftKings. If you weren't here earlier, rewind. We talked about the idea of maybe combining these two pitchers at cheap prices if you wanted to go double barrel cheap. Between the two, if you're just choosing one of the $7,600 Pepio, the $7,800 Eflin on DraftKings, and moderately priced but more expensive on FanDuel, which of these two pitchers do you prefer in this matchup?
Man, I think I'm going Pepiot.
I agree. I think he's just the higher end guy. Better swinging strike rate, better overall strikeout rate. We've seen him perform at a pretty high level over the last, season and a half, 2 seasons. Yeah, 130 innings over 26 starts last year with a 26% strikeout. Eflin's not bad, though. Last season, 3.59 ERA at 3.81 xFIP, just sub 20% strikeout, 19.6 last year against 3.5% walks. What he doesn't do a lot of, though, is put extra guys on base. He doesn't really get burnt in the whip department. 102 2 years ago, 115 last year. So far this year, a 109 whip against 3% walk rates every year. So at least a reasonable enough pitcher to throw against the Rays, where maybe along the way we could find a few strikeouts. In a 100 lineup scenario, just to put a round number on it, what percentage would you be at in 100 lineups on DraftKings of Pepio, and what percentage do you think you would be at of Eflin?
I got that feeling on my bad knee on Pepio. I could see myself at up to 30, 35 on Pepio. I think I'm getting crazy. Eflin, I haven't put much thought into. So I guess relative to the field,
just kind of maybe in the mix where we can
probably 10 to 20.
Okay. And again, that's not a ceiling play. I think for me, that's just kind of looking at that price on DraftKings and seeing a lot of meh after these two guys in that price range, and just kind of that's a hold your nose and go there spot. As much as I would go to Eflin, it would probably be like a 1 to 2 hedge position where for every Eflin, I want 2 stacks of Rays in some other lineups. Is that how you're kind of seeing all 4 sides of this? Is like, all right, a little bit of this, a little bit of that back and forth, or is there one spot of this that you just flat don't want?
No, I in this park, I'll take every side of it. I'm falling in love with Pepio, dude. Here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a 3-4. Basically, it's a split thing. So if you don't like splits, close your ears for like a minute. The Orioles are throwing just 2 righties tonight. They're going 7 lefties. Pepio against lefties this season, a 3.43 xFIP, a 28.7% K rate, 179 average allowed. Now, $1.25 on the home runs. That's certainly not out of play here. When I look at why is he striking out lefties so much, I go to Baseball Savant. I split the pitch types, and usually the 30+% whiff rates are on like your secondary pitches. His 34% whiff rate is on his fastball to lefties. 95.1 average miles per hour, a 181 expected batting average, a 360 expected slug with a 34% whiff rate. That's almost half against righties. I don't know. I guess it must just tail in such a way that lefties get tricked by it. And there's some definite ISO and talented bats in this Orioles lineup, but I'm kind of just want to get a little, put some makeup on and get cute with this split centric that I'm stumbling on here. And
that's real interesting.
Yeah, it's volatile.
Like you said, there are lefties who can put good wood on the ball in this lineup, but basically everybody in this lineup is scuffling at least to some degree, and a lot of them are striking out a little bit more, even if it's uncharacteristic than they have in when we've seen them previously. Like I said, Mullins 19.6 last year, 22.2 the year before, up at 25.2 so far this year. Walking a little bit more, but that doesn't really impact Pepio. 7.3% walk rate. You can take or leave that. It's average, but it's not bad. So yeah, I like it at that $7,600 price. We were kind of zeroed in on him early in the show at 92 on FanDuel. Are you equally excited about that, or does that price kind of start getting competitive with the other options from higher end spots?
Yeah. I'm definitely not as excited, but I do on FanDuel. Basically, if I'm going to play you, I need to know I can get 6 innings. He does have a little juice on over 17.5 outs, which is representative of 6 innings, possible quality start. So I feel like I lose a little zip, but I do feel like at 7K on DraftKings, I'm getting a heck of a deal, or or 7,600 on DraftKings. I'm getting a good deal based on the splits. And for a Steinbrenner Field game, both teams being under 5 runs is kind of not normal.
Showing quality, I think, for the offenses to at least give them the respect and have the ballpark factors play up like they should. But I think there is impact from the quality of both of these starters. And again, Eflin is a lower end guy and not a high ceiling type pitcher for DFS purposes, but he's effective enough in real life at keeping teams to between 3.5 and 5 runs. And could easily go out there. So a little bit of back and forth, even in the Vegas lines, with both teams coming in the mid 4s. To put a button on what you were just saying about Pepio, though, looking back through just the raw game log, pitched into the 6th inning in 7 straight starts and completed it in 6 of those 7. Last time out went 5 2/3 at Fenway, 3 earned runs, struck out 9, allowed a homer. Couple few home runs allowed, but typically going those 6 innings. There were, before that stretch, 3 straight starts, and then had a bumpy 4 1/3 against the Yanks. So just maybe every now and again against the AL East. Maybe it's that day against the Orioles, but overall has been pitching deep into ball games and has been effective. So yeah, for your money on DK, that's real interesting. And I tell you what, with Eflin, for as much as I think he's on the board for, at least a small portion of SP2 shares on DraftKings, at 88, when you get Pepio for 92 on the other side, that becomes more challenging on FanDuel, especially when you consider a general lack of ceiling. But he also has worked deep into games. You got to give him at least that in his last few: 7 innings, 6 innings, 6 2/3, handful of strikeouts in each. So again, he's at least interesting, but that higher price relative to the FanDuel cap is problematic. Talk to me about some of your favorite Orioles bats. What's your favorite 3-man group out of the O's if you're just going for a 3-man stack on DK?
It's probably Gunnar, O'Hearn, and Westberg, I guess. That little 3-4-5 lane seems kind of good. That's also their leaders in WRC plus and OPS. So that's the heart of the order you got to get through. It's kind of a direct
path right there. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, fill out shortstop, third base, and O'Hearn either in the outfield or first base. Pretty premium bats all across the board. Nobody even at 5,000. Gunnar checking in at a fair 4,800, 31 on FanDuel. He's slightly under the magic number at 978 in my home run model, but good as from the left side with his premium power upside. 8 homers, 9 steals, 339 on base. You could quibble with the 165 ISO so far. That's kind of what I was getting at. Everybody on this team, even their star like him, kind of scuffling their way along. Adley at just 232, 326, 373 with a 140 ISO, 7 home runs. A little bit bumpy for this squad. So yeah, if we're chasing those lefty swing and miss bats, maybe a little bit of upside, even in some of those guys like Gunnar with a 26.2 overall strikeout rate. Adley's fairly low strikeout, high walk, if nothing else this season. I think he's in the mix for catcher shares at 4,000, but he's been no great shakes against a talented pitcher. What about down the lineup? Any love for the Cedric Mullins, Colton Cowsers of the world?
Yeah, Mullins and Cowsers definitely have bats that'll play here. Both guys 200 plus ISOs since beginning of last year in their split. Great OPS. So certainly I'm in on that. Ryan O'Hearn is in the lineup. We've seen him in the lineup and then not in the lineup. He's dealing with an ankle thing. I don't know how bad it is, but with these potential pop-up showers, if it did get wet out there, I don't know if that would be something that we look out for before the game if they swap him back out for Kobe Mayo. But
could be. Could be something to watch for sure.
Yep.
Doug Gilly says has to play baseball today. Terry and Gunn, dream come true. Appreciate you, buddy. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, gang. As we dive in here, we'll take a quick look at the Rays, and then we'll move on to our next game. The low-low combination up at the top for reasonable enough pricing with some power upside going up against Eflin, who, as mentioned, doesn't really walk any guys, doesn't give up too many runs, but does allow plenty of premium contact, is a low strikeout, so high frequency of contact pitcher when you combine the low strikeout and the low walk rate. So with realistic upside for bat on ball, how interested are you in Rays? And does it circle around some of the lefties maybe targeting their also short porch and right?
Yeah, I've got a pretty good working relationship here with Brandon Lau and Jonathan Aranda this season. They've been coming through for me, and if any team has a book on Zach Eflin, it's probably the team he just played for. So I'm definitely in on the 1 through 5 of this lineup. Even Camanero's kind of like erases one of his early season woes, where he's just grounding into double play every at bat. So 1 through 5, I'm certainly involved in it. It falls off a massive cliff once you get to Caballero and Danny Jansen's behind the dish, I believe, and then Chris Morel can strike out at a high clip, but he does don't fall asleep popping his bat as well too. But yeah, 1 through 5, I'm in.
Yeah, for me, it goes 1 through 5. Very interested. And then it basically skips all the guys in the middle because on FanDuel, I'm not as interested in Danny Jansen. Maybe a couple shares of Jose Caballero for a little, correlated scoring upside. But the guy I actually am interested in going down the lineup with 3 positions at 2,400 on FanDuel, member of that little swing island, putting up a 16.1% barrel and a 44.8% hard hit rate in the very, very few batted ball events on which he actually makes contact. I actually do like Chris Morel down there. Just 5 home runs, 3 steals, and 157. The results have been terrible, but the swing is beautiful when it's going. And if he happens to connect against a guy who's going to allow some connections today, that's an upside bet to me that people don't go to as much. Especially when I can slot him in at second on FanDuel if I'm just hand building a lineup for only 2,400. He works his way into some of my lineups via a lot of different processes. If I do it by sorting, by projection, he projects out for cheap pricing a little bit better than some competitive guys with a medium home run grade. So I get him through a combination of things. So I'm kind of interested there. I don't think much of Jake Mangum. Where's he on your board?
For power?
Just in general, Jake, just looking at Mangum, who for me, he's just a guy who's, kind of occupying Chandler Simpson's job right now. He's done okay, but he's a 29, maybe 30 already quad A player.
Yeah. I mean, it's hit for average. The WRC plus maybe higher in the split than people might think, but I'm not, he's in, but I'm not like in love with him. He's not going crazy on the bomb detector right now.
Yeah, just kind of in the mix, I think, for a few here and there shares in the outfield. But 41, 27, I feel like he's a little bit lower end than like just another outfielder, even, maybe a little below replacement level. Favorite thing in this game before we jump on to the last 3?
Ryan Pepiot, man. I'm Pepiot and Mick Abel. You see me at the bottom of your contest tonight. So those two guys collapsed.
Love it. Love it. I'm with you on the Pepe thing, though, being potentially real, but this is very, very much a 4 corners game. I wouldn't surprise if I came away with a pretty fair share of a lot of this, with Eflin being, like, if I'm ranking it out, probably the bottom thing. So I probably would go like Pepio. I think Rays bats over Orioles bats slightly, and then Eflin bringing up the rear.
That's 100% what I've typed in my spreadsheet. Pepio, Rays, Orioles, Eflin.
I think that works. The Deverless Red Sox coming in at just a 3.08 implied total out in Seattle. Doesn't look like we've got lineups for any of these last 3 yet. The return of Logan Gilbert, who has not pitched since, I believe, April 25th, I want to say. Yeah, April 25th. Just went 3 innings in that game, struck out 3, and came out of the game against Miami. And we haven't seen him since. Did make 3 rehab starts, got up to 70-plus pitches in his last one. Typically can work pretty deep into a ball game, is a very, very talented pitcher going up against what now looks like a Red Sox lineup. My one concern is the price tag against the ceiling and how that works out for DFS. He projects out as my just raw highest implied total or highest median projection rather on the mound, but I don't know how far beyond that we can get. Is he in play at these prices? How much of them do you want relative to your 4 favorite pitchers that you've named, Mick Abel, Ryan Pepiot, and so forth?
Yeah, I think all things equal, I'm with you. Like if he projects as the highest raw scorer on this slate, and really just any slate, I'll take the most points possible from pitcher, give it to me, and I'll make the bats work because there's going to be 2K homers every day. The pushback here is he is the highest owned pitcher on the slate, and over half of the field will have him in there, and at least in their DraftKings lineup. So that's when you might think, hey, can I do something with $2,000 extra that Logan Gilbert lineups can't do? And then you also might think, hey, is Logan Gilbert? Do I shave off 20% of those lineups because they're with Jake Irvin, or maybe 10%? But I'm with you. I'm more likely to gravitate towards that chalk than I am Irvin, just because we know he is a good pitcher. We know this lineup stinks. We know this ballpark's a pitcher's ballpark, and like we mentioned earlier, there's maybe a little bit more. If there's going to be a lack of morale, it'll be this game. for the Red Sox. I don't even know who steps up here as the guy giving the speech at the front of the private airplane. Is it Trevor Story? Like, this team is so young.
Yeah, that's
and this pitch, and if Giolito starts getting got early, so I'm in on Gilbert, not like I'm out on Irvin. Like, I'm in on him despite him being 50% owned. But Irvin, I just think he's a bad pitcher, so no thank you. But I'll take the most projected points at pitcher.
Yeah, and my concern, I think that just thinking about like the geometry of what you just said, I think that since he's coming in so highly owned, even at a high price, that kind of maybe alleviates a little of my concern about the maybe lack of ceiling beyond this projection. For one thing, you've got most of the board not even probably able to achieve these numbers as their ceiling. So it kind of negates it that way. But if you're also you're just with everybody bumping their heads up against his ceiling or Jake Irvin's much more limited raw ceiling, which I think is maybe his ceiling approaches the median projection I've got for Gilbert. So even if we're just looking at a 5-inning start and 80 pitches, and if we achieve these numbers but take away the ceiling, if everybody's going that route, I think at worst you're okay. Maybe you're not gaining advantage, but you're not hurting yourself. You're not bad because of that somewhat limited ceiling. So that kind of takes that stress point away from it for me a little bit. If he's going to be popular, I'll just ride the chalk. And like you said, there's a million different ways to get different. What are you seeing about Giolito at 73, 74? How much of him do you want against a free swinging, if nothing else, Mariners club that definitely has some offensive upside?
Yeah, Mariners are always scared to pitch against. They're kind of Angels-esque where they hit for good power, strike out a lot. But unlike the Angels, they're pretty half and half. They can go lefty and righty really fast and mix things up. So Giolito is never really going to find that smooth lane of 3 same-handedness in a row. And he's a lot of power. 1.4 home run per 9 to lefties this season, 1.3 to righties, xFIP above 4 to both sides of the plate, just an 8% swing and strike rate, barrel rate 8.6%. There's a lot of attackable stuff, plus the 5.8 expected ERA. So I'm more on the Mariners side than the Giolito side. I'll concede that Giolito has enough spunk and there's enough Ks in his lineup that there's certainly an outcome where he is just a fine play at 7,300. But I'm leaning more towards the Mariners.
Yeah, at best, just kind of in that blender, maybe with like the Jake Irvins for whatever share you'll allow of Jake Irvin, those Sorianos, those kind of guys.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I got him right with Jake Irvin. But yeah,
Irvin does gain matchups wise. Giolito's it's weird if just looking at the raw game log, he'll give you 6 last time out of pretty decent performance, 1 run allowed but no earned, 4 strikeouts, 3 walks is mediocre. That was against the Rays, but got through it, booked the quality start. An inning and 2/3 and a meltdown the outing before that, just 4 2/3 before that against the Braves, then a 7-inning game, a 4-inning game, but then 6 2/3. There's just it's on off. I just, there's not much to get excited about when the raw numbers aren't totaling up to anything in the background. It's just difficult to nail down. And I think I come down with you. But what's intriguing is Vegas only has the Mariners of 4 implied runs, which kind of would normally be at least pushing the other way to some degree. So how much are the Mariners on your board? Like, is it a stack you're looking to get to? I got 3 guys above the magic number for home run upside, if nothing else.
I've got, what's my highest Mariner? I actually I gotta scroll down a little bit before I get there.
Ooh. I got Julio, Cal, and Rowdy at 10-8-2, 12-7-7, and 11-3-2 today.
Yeah, I got Cal at the top of the board, and there's probably 20 names above him, which is
interesting. Okay. Common. All right. A little bit of a discrepancy there.
Yeah. Maybe the hard Giolito is weird at 1.4 homer per 9, but this 26% hard contact to lefties. A lot of his hard contacts coming against righties. So you're turning Raleigh around here. But Raleigh, that's not a knock on Raleigh, could hit any side of the plate. But I think for the formula that the bond detector is working off of, I think that's what's pulling him down so much is the hard contact allowed by Giolito to lefties is much lower than his hard contact to righties.
That could very well be. And I don't know how much you pull in from 2023 at this point, which we didn't have Giolito last year for 2024, but I still have the model's got some legs. It's a long memory. Back in 2023, over 33 starts, 184 and a third. He allowed an 11% barrel, 18.6 degree average launch, 5.16% home run rate for the season in 33 starts. So he was super targetable for power. So I feel like if I'm trying to figure out where that's coming from in mine versus what you're seeing, I think that's probably what's leading to that difference in the two models. And the truth is probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. He's got to have the most confidence of any 5.8 expected ERA pitcher in baseball. Like when he's out there, and I don't hate. I mean, I guess Marcus Stroman has a lot of cockiness for no reason too. I guess, but
yeah, that might be a leading candidate for that. And then what's his face, who's struggling in the Japanese league after beating that girl up. Yeah, Bauer. Yeah,
he blocked me. So
oh, did he?
Yeah,
that's an accomplishment. Good job. I assume
actually him and Stroman blocked me, and then Stroman unblocked me when he got signed, and now I want him to block me again. He sucks.
That's hilarious. I love that you're somehow on his radar.
I don't know.
What a world. What about some Red Sox bats at that ridiculously low total? Gilbert, fantastic, but just coming back from a couple rehab outings and a short start expected. Is there any love for this dejected, miserable bunch of young players just wondering if they're next on the chopping block now?
So let's live react to the lineup. Roman Anthony's batting third.
Okay.
Myers batting fifth. I mean, it's I'm cherry picking the young guns there, but you're asking a lot of them, on the road, deep spot, tough park. That's where I would go. But Gilbert, I guess Gilbert's weakness, if there is one, is power to lefties. A 1.54 home run per nine so far this season, two lefties, but he also has a 56% ground ball rate. So, I mean, Roman Anthony, he's still young, so I'm not expecting him to be able to overcome numbers like that right away. So I would say no, I'm not really there. I mean, a 3.1 run total is kind of, I think, especially since like DraftKings Sportsbooks has had Gilbert. I thought they had him at 14.5, but now I don't even see him on the board for outs. So it's like, no, models aren't projecting Gilbert to go 7 innings and shut this team down. You got to factor in this bullpen. And if you get 3+ innings of a bullpen, it's very rare you get a team with a 3-run total, but that's what we got in this Red Sox team. And that's pretty crazy to see. And I guess the Mariners bullpen is fine enough. But yeah, I'm not that interested in the Red Sox at all. And they might be the first candidate to not be a 5-man stack for me. If I had to do that, Red Sox look like the least fun team for me.
Yeah, I gotta be with you. I mean, there are, again, the intriguing young upside bats that you called out with the 2 big prospects, and then Christian Campbell a few spots later for still cheap, but still a lot of talent despite some scuffling over the last month and change. And then, whoops, I do have Campbell in there twice. Oh, good. They finally dropped it on Labs. I can just paste it in now after all that. I thought I had it.
I just type
It's today Rafaela there. Why did it not go in?
There we go.
That's that stupid Excel's fault. So Rafaela, who's hit the ball really hard this year and seen moderate results. He was just counting stats last year. He's kind of similar at a 90 WRC plus overall, but 6 home runs, 10 steals for our purposes. But yeah, really limited and just a challenging starter for those young hitters to go up against while they're trying to find their footing and what's going on. Roman Anthony, all the raw power in the world for cheap prices on both sites. I guess you get upside there. Jarren Duran probably going to be your most reliable option to lead things off, even with his shakiness so far this season. 48-32 though against Logan Gilbert for 5. I don't love anything here. So yeah, I'm kind of with you on maybe we're taking the Red Sox down and they're going to burn us completely and it's going to be Jake Irvin and the Red Sox kind of a day, or I think we're looking at it the right way and they're just kind of not appealing today. We talked through we talked about the Mariners at least. Favorite bats from the Mariners who aren't like Julio and Cal around the edges? Would you like to go with those 2 guys?
I'm gonna go. Let's get weird. Let's go Randy Rosarina. 11.5% walk rate, and a 27.6% K rate. That 27.6% might be neutralized by 11% versus Giolito's lack of strikeout stuff. And if we can get a Rosarena on the bases, he could steal a base too. So whether he walks or and every now and then he'll surprise you with a big swing. But yeah, probably a Rosarena just to get a little more creative middle of the lineup.
I like it. I think that's a really good call. I think he's at this point, maybe underappreciated player, or maybe at one point he was a little overappreciated. I feel like he did see more results for his power maybe a couple seasons ago, but right now carrying a 10.8% barrel, 49.4% hard hits, just 8 home runs in nearly 300 plate appearances and only a 162 ISO. So we're obviously seeing maybe a little bit of lack of luck, lack of results, whatever you want to say. But to go with that, a 351 xWOB under the covers, getting on base at a 357 clip, creating runs 25% better than average, to sit second only to Cal Raleigh, whose 26 home runs are tied for the league leads. So yeah, I'm with you on Rosarena. I like that. Larry C calling out that Rowdy Tellez seems to be above 10 in the home run model a fair amount of the time. Yeah, he has been creeping up there a number of times in interesting spots, but I think it's usually a justifiable spot. And Rowdy has always had decent premium contact upside, fair amount of home run ability from the left side of the plate. So definitely mathing out that way again today. We've capitalized it on a couple times, Lar. I think at a cheap price at first base, he's at worst a mixer. You have Rowdy Tellez on the board. You looking at any of Ben Williamson, Canzone, Cole Young down the bottom of the Mariners lineup, Gun?
Yeah, I mean, if we have to get there, we got to mix these Mariners lineups a little bit. I do think Rowdy's intriguing. I feel like his pop ain't quite Toronto pop, but 180 ISO in this split since the beginning of last year. That dog will hunt. We know Giolito can serve him up to lefty. He's probably more susceptible. But like I said, he's not popping in the bomb detector because of Giolito's hard contact to lefties. That's kind of just dragging everyone down from the projection standpoint. But he makes perfect sense logistically.
Okay. All right.
Especially for like a Rosarena to steal a bag and be in scoring position.
Yeah. You got to love that correlation when you're going that route and you're looking at a guy for being a little bit of a table setter, stolen base bonus, but then you want to have that additional kick from the guy who hits the big knock and drives them in. And, maybe that could be Rowdy on the right day. 421 opportunities last year, hit just 13 home runs, an underwhelming season for sure, a 149 ISO. Year before that, 161 with 13 homers, but only 351 plate appearances. And then a huge season back in 22, had 35 home runs and 599 chances, a 242 ISO. So again, long memory in the model. To go back to Larry C's question, that's where some of the power upside that you've seen have come, but I feel like it's always been on the right days lately. So he would be my favorite down lineup bat from the Mariners side. Favorite thing in this game?
Logan Gilbert.
Fair. I think that's justifiable. 2 to go. Astros 5-6-1 implied total. The A's a 5-1-1 implied total. Ryan Gusto against JP Sears. Any reason to play either of these pitchers? Is one of them on the radar a little bit?
I mean, there's an above 1 in 5K rate in Gusto, and Athletics can strike out, but it's there's no warm and fuzzies behind that one.
And I feel like Vegas just pushing these teams, these totals up as much as it is, with 5+ implied runs on both sides, all the power that this ballpark can provide on the right day. Just feels like they're kind of telling us to stay away from the pitching, but maybe if we're throwing darts at relative, cheap prices, 8,000, 7,500 in the blender for you on DraftKings, or are you just kind of taking these guys out of the equation?
I'm way more likely to play Gusto. If I had to create an excuse, we got the 23% K rate for Gusto, the almost 11% swing and strike rate, and then against righties, he really pulls that hard contact rate down, the line drive rate down, and the walk rate at 5%. So if the Athletics projected has 3 lefties, if it is righty heavy, maybe those stats have a simulation where they come through at 8K. But that's the humanistic side of me is way more on the Athletics and Astros at home. I have no interest in JP Sears, though.
Okay. Yeah, Sears checking in a 5.08 ERA, 4.46 xFIP. The strikeout to walk in a vacuum, it's a sub 20% strikeout rate, but against a low walk rate is fine. But he gives up so much premium contact, 9% barrels, 43.2% hard hits, 90+ miles an hour of exit velo are all at or above our thresholds, or around or above our thresholds. So it just, to me, equals another guy who's going to give up a lot of frequent contact and it's going to be high quality contact against a team that can go find it. I mean, they're not exactly excelling this year by and large, but there are good bats on this Astros team. They're pulling a 5.61 implied total. They just seem undeniable in this spot. How much do you want to get to Astros? How much do you want to get to A's? Where do they rank out for you in terms of the overall like top stacks of the day?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the times where the Astros being so righty heavy is actually a plus for them against a lefty that really struggles with righties. I think, without any type of attachment to the slate or a pulse of ownership, they would be my number one. But now we consider ownership, and they're everyone's number one. And there's not really a close second to the second team on the slate in terms of ownership is probably going to be maybe the Dodgers, but maybe the Athletics creep up there. So they're almost lapping the field in ownership. So I think mathematically they're number one, but now we start dancing around with do we want to try to leverage the spot and bet on failure?
Fair. Yeah, absolutely. I think, looking up and down these lineups, I see it, similarly, but I tend to, just for whatever reason, be drawn to some of those A's names a little bit, but everybody's at least a little bit goosed for price up at the top of the lineup. You got some fairly high prices, nobody breaking the bank, but everybody up a little bit. The quality bats that I want to get to, except maybe for Kurtz in the 6th spot. If I'm looking at it, 2,800, 2,700. So maybe you're forgoing one of the guys above and getting to some of that power upside for Kurtz. If you're going to the A's, he's hit 6 in 129 chances, putting good wood on the ball so far, kind of fulfilling his pedigree right now, and not at all priced up. So that draws me to the bottom of the A's. Luis Urias, maybe if he's hitting down that way, can go deep against anybody. 7 home runs in 207 chances, but mediocre overall. And then the bottom 2 spots in the A's, kind of a little bit more like write-off spots. So it's maybe a shortened lineup, but that total is very appealing here. If we're looking at the Astros, you got Jainer Diaz still checking in at 3,300 on DraftKings. He's hit 9 home runs, if nothing else. 89 WRC plus, obviously not appealing, but a 341 xWOBA, putting good wood on the ball. Very few strikeouts, minimal walks, so a lot of contact. He's an appealing catcher, and he fits kind of into the mold of just having that cheap catcher slot in on DK, whether it's as a one-off or comes along for the ride for stacks. Is he a priority bat in that Astros lineup, even with the underperformance this year?
Yeah, I think 1 through 3. I think Altuve is going to be the the real litmus test on performance versus clicking. But I think when I isolate, I'm a split guy. When I isolate the split, and my memory goes to the beginning of last year, an awful lot of green here. Not much on the walks, but I don't care about walks in DFS. Give me
for sure.
Tap me into that ISO, and there's a lot of hit for average, a good enough amount of ISO that could play up to this park and play a WRC plus. So I just kind of trust the process and the long-term stats on that. Yeah,
that's right where I am with this player, and I've been talking about it all year as he continues to bounce along the bottom in some of these categories. 243, 275 is just so uncharacteristic on the front end for this for what this kid is. So continue as a buyer there, and he's in the mix for me on FanDuel as well. We've got Christian Walker, who's showing still, despite his kind of stumbles this season, over 281 chances, still showing a good number for me in the home run model. The only guy on this team above the magic number, but a few guys close to it. He's entirely reasonable at 37-28, 9 home runs on the board this season. Underwhelming, but making great contact, 13.5% barrels, 46.6% hard hits. You interested in Christian Walker in the heart of the lineup here? How much of a priority is he for you?
Yeah, oddly enough, I mean, there's not an Astro I wouldn't get to here, but Christian Walker's like, man, he's been so disappointing. He was another guy that every team that needed a first baseman fan base was like, we should get Christian Walker. And
he's been really good the last few years. Power was strikeouts have gone up they went up year over year last year, but then they went up again this year by another 4 points so far, which I think is really problematic. But he used to be super low strikeout, high walk, tons of good bat on ball, bunch of homers. I don't really get the slip. It's been something to watch.
It's been dramatic. You couldn't get me to say no on just about any name you're about to say from this game. I think the inner DFS player in me is kind of getting mad at how unfair the pricing is for this game. Like, this should be we have enough sample now. The Sutter Health has played second to just Coors Field this season. We should be taxed on bats in this game to make the game a little bit more I don't know, trivial. This is just way too cheap on both sides for especially the Astros. But Astros are just too cheap. So even though some of these guys are slumping, you put them in this park at under 4K on DraftKings. Yeah, I'm clicking it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's just the price alone makes them really appealing. The ballpark, everything just kind of rides along with that. Seeing a little bit of in the chat, Todd Strong mentions Vegas still has A's SP as undecided. I just clicked back over to Labs and it looks like they actually swapped out to Mitch Spence.
So the A's
both pitchers in this game now.
Yeah, the A's have done this a lot in the last couple of weeks, and I think sometimes it feels like they don't know. If I put Mitch Spence in the blender,
Spence has gone 5 in full starts in each of his last 2. He's on full rest, it looks like.
So Spence certainly profiles better. He's not great, but he's better than Sears, and especially if you tap into his righty power allowed. But yeah, I had Sears, and I see what you see with Spence. So I guess maybe they say, okay, you want to change Lance McCullers? We got this. Now let's okey doke him on lefty to Spence.
Screw you guys up too. Let me grab Mitch Spence here just to get the impact taken care of. Spence,
Mitch. Twitter sweep to see if something comes up. But yeah, it looks like Spence is the guy. Yeah. My initial thought was, maybe it's an opener situation when somebody was saying that it was undecided, but definitely doesn't look that way with Spence going full 5 in the last couple. So I'm just going to swap them in directly. I already had Sears. That was just getting the impact 4-5. Oh, changed to 5 from the default. So not getting much of a projection on Spence right now. Not that we were getting much. If I just give him 5 innings, we weren't getting much on Sears anyway. Like you were saying, better strikeout rate. You can see a little bit of a positive mark by Stuff Plus at 102.45, pitching to a 3.67 ERA. The swinging strike rate stands out. It's only 49 innings, 2 starts, some relief work in there. I would imagine that's spiked by that relief work. Yeah, obviously coming out of the pen, you're putting more favorable matchups. And pull up his pitch types. He's throwing cutter, slider, curveball. His whiffs come heavily on the slider, 40.5% whiff rate. The curveball, 34.7% whiff rate. Expected slug on the slider and curveball is respectable. So as long as he's leaning on slider and curveball, he's in there. Well, 538 expected slug on his cutter, 1 dot on his sinker. Stay away from that. It definitely like a minute ago I had Astros over Athletics, and now I'm kind of feeling like I might swap that.
Yeah, I feel like just eyeballing it. I think when I made that change, some of the Astros home run marks, like Christian Walker, I think I said was above the magic number. He's down to 8.33 in this change over to Spence. So it's having an impact, at least for me, a little bit in the model. Difficult to quantify just off the top of my head. I also haven't changed any of the run numbers on the back end if they changed. But
no, I'm still looking at 5.7 to 5.1.
Okay.
So yeah, this is a whole different game than what I typed before I went to sleep.
Seriously. So does that swing you officially over more toward the A side then? You're just kind of thinking maybe.
It does, and I is there a world where I get to some Mitch Spence today? I don't. That guy pitching against the number 1 stack, now we can really get weird.
6,600 on FanDuel. My question there is if we have any shot at a quality start upside.
75 pitches is last out. Could we add 10 to that? Yeah, it might get rough. And that might be a case where the lack of strikeouts help him go deeper if he can just steal some outs on a couple of pitches.
That becomes a weird little wrinkle on this slate all of a sudden.
Yeah, and apparently I'm looking at tweets from 4 hours ago. I don't know how I missed this, where people were talking about his props. So I guess it's been a thing, but I missed the memo.
Huh. Yeah, I definitely did not have that on my radar until
I definitely got to make a note now. Anytime Athletics are on the slate, because this has happened far too often with the Athletics and not knowing who's pitching for them.
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on. We've had some weird swapping the last day or two in the baseball. There were like 5 late scratches yesterday, or maybe that was Saturday. It's been a weird.
Here's a fun stat. In last 300 pitches thrown, Mitch Spence is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th in the league in whiffs with 52. Names above him are Tyler Megill, Spencer Strider, Robbie Ray, Framber Valdez, Grant Holmes, and Dylan Cease. Like, those are some names.
Wow. It's got to be at least intriguing. I mean, honestly, on FanDuel, even with just 5 innings of expectation, we've obviously still got the ballpark working against for people out there listening to us. Like, you know, as much as we might sound like we're falling in love with this spot, I think it all comes with a very, very big word of caution. Mm-hmm. But that is a uniquely now offset cheap price for a guy who maybe finds some Ks along the way. The one thing you could throw into the blender with that, though, is you've got some extreme low strikeout rates up at the top of this Astros lineup to work with.
Yeah, that's at the top. There are some in this lineup.
For sure.
But like I said, I don't think that's a bad thing. If Altuve grounds out on one pitch and we can get deeper, I'm in on that, because it's not like those guys are low strikeout but low walk rate. They're just swing happy, and that's
very true.
Not always a bad thing.
Yeah, that is an interesting wrinkle. How much, if you had to, if we're 30 seconds from lock and you just had to pick a percentage across 100 DraftKings lineups, what kind of percentage of Mitch Spence you at?
I think I panic put 10. I feel like no one else is probably getting to him at 10%, and Astros are still the top owned stack by a mile. So I get double the leverage somehow on just 10%.
Yeah,
so
I think that. Yeah, look, it's entirely reasonable. Ignore while we're looking at this, guys. Kind of ignore where that projection is right now. It definitely needs a look on the back end there. But 75 at worst is going to fit in with some of these prices, which is
also say
the guys we've talked about.
The tools that I'm looking at as far as ownership projection also lists years. So maybe these ownerships are going to change when those update. Maybe that game theory
probably
is flipped on its head.
Yeah, that'll definitely swing some things around if that hasn't updated yet. But interesting wrinkle on the slate. For me, I think this. Oh man. Yeah, I think I go A's bats. I probably keep the bats on top though. I probably go A's bats, Astros bats, and then whatever Mitch Spence I get to for cheap. I do think, given how uniquely cheap that is on FanDuel, though, I'll probably end up with at least some lineups floating up that I'll have to consider whether or not I want them as I go through like the final culling there of my lineups.
Yeah, the A's lineup did just come out, and
I just dropped it in there. Go for it.
No, it feels more top heavy. I think some of these guys at the bottom of the order still have some wrinkles to iron out, but it's 1 through 5. Max Muncy, despite what I want for spreadsheet purposes, has been showing like he's a top draft pick all of a sudden. So maybe he's finding that swing. So 1 through 6 is where I'm at.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I just changed Max Muncy over to get the corrected projection. That name issue with the two of them on the same slate needs to be fixed on the back end by the sites. Giant pain in the ass for projections. But he slots in for a fair price, $2,500 at 3 positions on FanDuel. I'm not sure where he is on DK because I didn't change it, but we won't deal with that now. Lefty heavy lineup coming at Ryan Gusto, but yeah, I'm with you. Top 6 is where I'm interested in. Maybe a little JJ Bleday around the edges for good luck. Not having very good luck this season at 197, 293, 362, at 282 ex-WOBA. 7 home runs, a 165 ISO, though, in those 215 opportunities. He's not a total dead spot DFS-wise. I mean, most days he is, but every now and then you get a blip.
No, I'm with you. The ISO and the walk rate, basically, but OPS. I should just say OPS, but OPS is green enough that he'll fall in there at that price.
Yeah, a couple few shares. Last game up, Pods, Dodgers, Dylan Cease coming in with a 16.5% swinging strike rate, a 30.6% CSW, just under the mark for strikeouts at 29.9, but we'll call that 30%. A few too many walks, but it doesn't really cost him that much. XFIP of run lower than the ERA. Fantastic stuff. Going up against one of the best teams in baseball. Super low strikeout team overall, but a few gettable guys maybe, depending on what we get from the Dodgers. What do you think of Dylan Cease at 84 and at 95? Kind of separate questions price-wise on both sides.
I think this is we all concede he's probably the best talented. Maybe Gilbert's in there as far as like who do I think is the best talent pitcher on the slate. But the matchup is the matchup, and this matchup matters. It has knocked his ownership to less than 10%, whereas Gilbert's 55%. So I think that matters, and because it's so low at that price point, yeah, I'm definitely going to have some. 10% is what for a portfolio of lineups if you're just trying to spread it out, but it is butt puckering for this matchup. And I so usually in my bomb detector, if I get like a crazy number, it means like the pitcher has 20 innings or the hitter has 20 innings. I have the largest sample, highest number I think I've ever seen in the home run model, and there's like no park factor, no weather factor, nothing that's altering it that I can explain for it to be the biggest number of all time. And
Martin Maldonado.
Darn. Yeah, I don't know. Ohtani. So this might be if Ohtani strikes out the side and then hits a 500-foot bomb, I quit.
Just ridiculous. Yeah, he's 11.18. Not necessarily my highest today, but certainly more than high enough, and obviously just tremendous up at the top. Yeah, as you said too, opening this game, you can see him down here, but not available to us as a pitcher. So ignore those prices, ignore everything about that. As far as I know, still it's going to be Ben Kasparius as the bulk relief spot. With him coming in, we kind of referred to it, and I can swap them out actually actively here. With Kasparius coming in at 6,000, 6,500 I gave him 4 innings and he projects out fine enough. I mean, 11 DraftKings points at 6,000, 22 FanDuel points at 65. It's just, I don't know that there's much ceiling on it. And it is maybe a little bit more limited and challenged by just the low strikeout nature of some of these Padres. What are you seeing on the Kasparius thing at those prices? You have any of them?
Yeah, I mean, untouchable on FanDuel just because you don't get a quality start. 6K, like I said, there's a world where his 14% swing and strike rate and his overall K rate lives, and he could scoop and score the win on 3.5, 4 innings, and maybe get you 15 plus fantasy points. But you're looking, I don't know, that's an outlier, but you're kind of looking for best case scenario, where the real threat in this Padres lineup is they are going to make you work for those strikeouts. Because they don't strike out that much, but I got only 3 guys with above 9% walk rate since the beginning of last year against righty. So maybe a little bit more aggressive could get them in trouble. So I would say right now that I'm not getting cute and playing Kasparius, but like halfway through the slate, if something crazy happens and I gotta save a lineup that has no points, maybe I just the late swaps from Kasparius in there and go NBA on him.
That's an interesting way to look at him. Yeah. As like just a weird pivot at that point in a slate. That's I like that to keep him on the board for that, because I mean, like, he's coming in with a 26% strikeout rate, 13.9% swinging. It comes against a 5.1 walk in 44 innings, pair of starts, some bulk relief appearances. Very, very capable on the mound. It's just they've been kind of jerking him around with what this role really looks like. I'm interested in the pitcher in a vacuum, but I hate the matchup. Like you said, on FanDuel, I'm not getting the upside, but yeah, maybe as a weird mixer for some swaps on DK. What do we think about Padres bats against that combination of one of the best pitchers in baseball for an inning or 2? Do you think Ohtani goes 2, or do you think he just pure opening, just 1 inning?
This is so weird because the man hasn't pitched in forever.
Yeah, and 40, I think, in the last rehab.
So
or whatever that was.
A simulated game, right? Like against it's like, yeah, a lot of pitchers they got to go play with the minor league team, get ramped up, and it's just not a real game. To his credit, I mean, if the Dodgers are going to throw you simulated bats, they got some of the best in the world to do it.
True.
And you get up there, but I mean, we've seen him be shaky in some spots, so I don't think it's a crazy outcome for him to go up there and then Tatis and Machado get into him, just because he has some rust to deal with.
Yeah,
but again, much like Kasparius, we're kind of dealing with one at bat outcomes, and it's really just you don't know what's going to happen. But I don't know that I'm buying right off the rip that he's going to be locked down, shut down. The first inning is no hits type of baseball. I think.
Okay.
This is
So
a
maybe
high energy.
his presence as the opener maybe doesn't like take the top off the lineup like it otherwise might if it was healthy Shohei Ohtani from 2 years ago in the opener role for an inning.
Yeah, I'm just saying
Wouldn't necessarily change things as much.
There's a chance just because of the rust and him having a very unorthodox road back, especially that much time off to not go be a pitcher for a couple weeks and mix it back up. But I get it. They're in a weird spot where they're about to let go of the division and they just
can't take that bat out to send them down to AAA for a few rehab starts. It'd be a big impact that way.
And the Padres. You watch the Padre Dodgers game. I mean, every time they play, it feels like a playoff game with the crowds. Sure. This is quite the first taste back. So I think there is a true outcome or a true opportunity for me to Padres to punch him in the mouth. Everybody got to play until you get punched in the mouth, right? and then we'll see if he comes back with that bomb.
All right. I like it. Favorite after we get through, let's say, Gavin Sheets in the 4 spot, who's having a great season, putting good bat on ball and would be in the mix for some pod stacks for me. After him, the more obvious guys, anything to like about like 5 down in this pod's lineup, or is it just crazy super top heavy?
It's very top heavy. Jake Cronenworth is probably the pulse of life for me in the middle. Meager, average, respectable ISO OPS. And he's going to make you work for that strikeout with 11+% walk rate, 126 WRC plus. But man, this is bad. This makes me. This is a good part of the lineup for Kasparius to start his night.
Yeah,
and get ramped up to flip the lineup over. So I'm not
checking around bogey. You could come out with 5 straight strikeouts to start the day for Kasparius and be feeling good about that $6,000 in a hurry.
100%. And like Kasparius is just good. I don't know people have.
Yeah, he's got that stuff.
Yeah,
like they haven't very real way.
The public perception probably it's not caught up. Like, not that they think he's bad, they just don't know who he is.
Right.
Because of he's really good. All of his underlying stuff is like elite. So there's a real world where 6K plays up here.
Yeah, it's yet another just interesting wrinkle on this weird shortish kind of pitching slate. It's like short, but maybe not really. It's a very weird, defies description kind of thing. Anthony in the chat saying Ballerina was real good action, the John Wick spinoff. We had a question about a lineup in chat that I want to scroll back to. I'm not sure if Don's even here. This was from a while ago, and we got to end things very soon because this slate starts in just a little bit. But he said he had Schmidt, Pepio as his pitchers, with Chaparro, Altuve, Pena, McMahon, Lawrence Butler, Booker, and Schwarber or Wood. What do you think of that lineup?
I wonder if he was building that against JP Sears with because man, Altuve is just not fun to play if it's not against.
Yeah, that's actually interesting.
Lefty.
He's probably right. Yeah.
And in that moment of time, I would be just fine with it.
So now maybe be looking if Don's still here, maybe be looking at swapping out some of those Astros.
Yeah,
a little bit more upside, maybe grab some correlation with Nats or something like that.
Yeah, I think I'm really curious to see how this ownership update comes out. If the tools I'm using will, because the Astros game is so chalky, and I just feel like it did come out. They're still pretty well represented by 1 in 5, a little over 1 in 5 of the field. Or a little under 1 in 5, rather. Every other team is under 10%. So it's
interesting. Getting a push from that ballpark, I think.
100%. Yeah. And maybe some early, early excitement from the potential pitching matchup. Because
there you go. I don't know. Favorite bat to round things out from after the top 4 in this projected Dodgers.
Max Muncy, he's got them glasses, man. You've been tracking that?
Love it. Yes, absolutely. I've been talking about it like crazy. I was saying at the beginning of the year that it wasn't shot. I didn't know why. I had no idea that he couldn't see the ball, but we've got an explanation why. Yeah, very much with you.
Yeah, Cease is elite, but he gives up power to righties, and that's why Ohtani's rated so high, and Max Muncy's got the second highest ISO against righties on this team since the beginning of last year. So Muncy would be the guy for me to catch some slack in the bottom half of a lineup.
Love it. You still get him at a cheap price on both sites, maybe a little bit of underappreciation publicly, so maybe some low ownership, but that's a 9-man lineup. Build it however you want if you're stacking Dodgers. Final thoughts, Gun. We got to punch out so I can update the site before the slate starts.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty to work with as far as giving the field their chalk and working around it. And, there's some chalk I'll take, like Logan Gilbert, some chalk I'm going to give back, like Jake Irvin. And I think there's plenty of pieces here in this chess game that it's going to be fun.
I like it. That's a solid approach. And I think we're in lockstep on the just general angle on the slate. Home run pick of the day from the bomb detector.
All right. The weirdest name, I should say, because it's at the top. It's Ohtani, Judge, Lau, Aranda, the usual suspects. And man, it actually doesn't get weird for a while. Is Jordan Westbrook weird?
I think so.
All right.
I think it's weird enough.
He's number 5.
Okay. Yeah, we'll take that one. That's an interesting one. I went with James Wood, just kind of a chalky pick today, and wasn't really paying attention to the ownership on the slate, but I'll take it. We'll see, maybe a little bit off the underrated with the matchup, but see what happens there. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate you, buddy, and everybody else hanging out in chat. Thank you, Gun. This was a blast. Glad we were able to work out our scheduling collision there, and we'll just keep making this happen, I think, throughout the season. This is a lot of fun. We soaked up a ton of time today. Got to get out of here. If you're going over to the site, that'll be updated in the next couple minutes. Rotoscouts.com, under $1 a day for access to everything. Gun, plug your site again.
Hey, sometimes on YouTube, always on MLBgrind.com. Lately, I was streaming like 2 or 3 times a week, but I'm always upkeeping the tools behind the scenes.
There we go. Love it. Good luck out there tonight, gang. Somebody win something, share the results with us on Twitter, in Discord when you do. We're both hanging around. We love to see that. When you guys do well, makes us feel better. Even if our night's not going well, if it is going well, love seeing the wins. And we'll be back with more tomorrow. Later, gang.